The night opens gently, not with a thunderclap of revelation, but with the slow drift of curiosity. Imagine yourself lying back, your breathing steady, the world around you dimming into quiet. In this hush, we raise a question that has carried itself across the silence of the cosmos, a question sparked by a faint visitor, streaking through the blackness, pulling behind it a tale of light and riddles. The comet 3I Atlas. It is not the first wanderer to slip into our solar system. Others have come, leaving trails of speculation and astonishment. Oumuamua, Borisov, strangers on journeys so vast they make even the orbit of Neptune seem like a step across a room. But 3I Atlas is different. It has pulled our gaze more tightly, as if whispering secrets while rushing toward a rendezvous with the red planet Mars. The story begins not in numbers and equations, though there are plenty of those. It begins with the simple fact of looking upward. For thousands of years, humanity has stared at streaks of fire across the night sky and asked, what does it mean kings once feared them as omens of war? Farmers saw them as signs of change in the harvest. Poets called them the handwriting of the heavens, written in flames. And now, in the age of telescopes and satellites, we still look and wonder not only with science, but with the same pulse of awe. The impossible that 3I Atlas carries is not something you can see with bare eyes. It lies buried in the data, a tilt that doesn't match the expected trajectory, a shimmer of brightness that shifts in ways our models resist, a whisper of acceleration as though the comet is nudged by something more than sunlight and outgassing. Astronomers pore over charts, computers whir with simulations, yet something in this visitor refuses to fit neatly. And so, we find ourselves here half dreaming, half questioning, asking if perhaps the sky is offering more than a natural spectacle. Could 3I Atlas be a mirror, showing us the limits of our understanding? Could it be a messenger, carrying news from realms we cannot yet imagine, or is it simply another stone wrapped in ice, hurtling as stones and ice have done for billions of years? As you listen, let yourself drift with the comet. Picture its path. Beyond Jupiter's orbit, sweeping closer, a frozen traveler older than every civilization combined. It has crossed the void for eons without witness. And only now, in our brief flicker of history, we notice that coincidence alone is enough to stir something deep. Why now? Why us? Perhaps there is no answer. Perhaps the only meaning is the one we give it. But as 3I Atlas draws near Mars, astronomers whisper words like anomaly and impossible. They are careful, cautious. Science trains us to doubt, to test, to measure. Yet behind the measurements lies a human heart, one that feels the thrill of standing on the edge of discovery, peering into a shadow that might reveal something never seen before. Tonight, let's not rush to solve the puzzle. Let's allow ourselves to rest inside it, because the beauty of such mysteries is not only in their resolution, but in the way they stretch our imaginations. They remind us that the universe is not a solved equation but an unfolding story, and sometimes a comet is both a character and a question mark written in the sky. So breathe slowly. The data will wait. The theories will spin. For now, picture the glow of 3I Atlas as it inches closer to Mars, carrying with it not only dust and ice, but the humbling truth that the universe still holds secrets that defy even our boldest expectations. And in that space between certainty and wonder, we drift together into the first chapter of our journey. Long before 3I Atlas entered our telescopes, humanity had already been introduced to the concept of interstellar visitors. In 2017, the world held its breath when Oumuamua swept past the sun, a needle-shaped fragment tumbling so strangely that even seasoned astronomers whispered possibilities that sounded more like science fiction than astrophysics. 2 years later came Borisov, a more traditional comet, glowing with the familiar trail of dust and ice, yet still remarkable for having arrived from beyond our solar cradle. Those two travelers taught us something profound. The solar system is not a sealed bubble. It is a crossroads, an open thoroughfare, in a galaxy where stars drift and planetary systems shed their icy debris. But while Oumuamua and Borisov left us with awe, they also departed quickly, vanishing back into the dark. By the time theories were built, they were already out of reach. 3i Atlas, however, lingers in a different way. Its trajectory bends it closer to the inner worlds, and in doing so, it has given scientists more time to watch, to measure, to question. And with that time has come unease. Its behavior doesn't always match what the textbooks say. A comet, after all, is supposed to be predictable once you know its orbit, its spin, its icy composition. But the more closely astronomers stare at this third visitor, the more it resists prediction. Part of the fascination lies in its timing. For centuries, comets were interpreted as messages, omens scrawled across the night sky. The appearance of Halley's comet was once blamed for battles lost and kings undone. In ancient China, records carefully noted comets as warnings from heaven. Even in Europe's Middle Ages, these streaks of light were feared as heralds of plague and disaster. Now, in the 21st century, when we have replaced myth with math, we still find ourselves leaning forward when one of these wanderers arrives, wondering not just what it is, but what it means. What sets 3i Atlas apart is not only its foreign origin, but its defiance of neat categories. Oumuamua looked like no comet ever seen. Borisov behaved exactly like one. 3i Atlas sits uneasily between, as if it can't quite decide which story it wants to tell. Its brightness fluctuates oddly. Its trajectory carries subtle deviations that models can't explain with ordinary outgassing alone. To some, these are simply puzzles waiting for better data. To others, they feel like the faint tapping of something impossible against the glass of our understanding. Imagine standing outside on a clear night. Mars glows red above the horizon, and somewhere beyond, this visitor is sweeping closer. You know that countless instruments, radio dishes, infrared sensors, powerful telescopes are turned toward the same point. In universities and observatories, teams trade data, argue, revise. Each number recorded is another step into mystery. And as ordinary as those numbers may look on a screen, behind them lurks a question as old as firelight storytelling. Are we alone, or is the universe sending us a reminder that we are part of something much larger? To call it an omen would be unscientific. To call it just a comet feels premature. What 3i Atlas has given us, even before reaching Mars, is something rarer: the chance to hold wonder and doubt in the same hand, to watch science bend under the weight of the unknown. And that is why this story continues, because every interstellar visitor is not only a scientific event, but a mirror. It shows us not just the sky above, but the way we react, the way we balance fear and curiosity, skepticism and hope. Oumuamua startled us. Borisov reassured us. 3i Atlas unsettles us again, and in that unease lies the promise of discovery. Imagine a quiet evening under the open sky. The world around you fades into the hush of crickets, the faint hum of a city in the distance, or perhaps only the soft wind through trees. Above, a strange glow moves across the heavens. Not a star, not a plane, not the familiar arc of the moon. It is 3i Atlas, a visitor older than human memory, now visible to the naked eye. For those who look up and see it, the feeling is not uniform. Some sense wonder, a thrill that life on Earth has granted them the chance to witness something so rare. Others feel the chill of unease, as if the sky has cracked open to remind us how small we are. Awe and fear have always walked together when comets appear. The ancients saw fiery messengers of doom. Modern observers see icy physics at work. Yet deep inside, the emotions are the same. A pulse quickens, a question rises, A quiet shiver runs down the spine. There is something humbling about realizing that this streak of light has traveled for millions, perhaps billions of years, unseen, untouched, until now. It is like encountering a traveler in the night whose footsteps echo from a road far older than our civilizations, and in that moment, you are no longer just a bystander on Earth. You are part of a cosmic meeting, a witness to the impossible brush of deep time against the fragile span of a human life. Children point upward, their questions tumbling faster than parents can answer. Where did it come from? Why is it here? Will it hit us? Their wonder echoes the voices of ancestors who once huddled by fire, asking similar questions without the vocabulary of science. Even now, with our telescopes and equations, we still circle back to that primal awe. For astronomers, the feeling is sharper. The night sky is their familiar companion, but when 3I Atlas streaks across it, they too feel the tug of mystery. Data fills their screens, lines of numbers forming graphs that should explain everything. Yet the graphs resist, bending toward anomalies, refusing to settle into tidy explanations. Some scientists call it noise, others call it the impossible. But all of them feel that rare, electric sensation that perhaps, just perhaps, something extraordinary is unfolding right before them. And what about the dreamers, the poets, the seekers who lie on rooftops or in fields, simply watching? For them, 3I Atlas is more than a comet. It is a story etched in firelight across the black canvas of space. It is a question mark dangling above Mars, a whisper that the universe has chapters we have not yet read. Some feel fear. What if it means danger? Others feel hope. What if it means connection? Most of us feel both, twined together in the same heartbeat. To look at a comet is to look at yourself. You see your own smallness reflected in its vast journey. You see your own impermanence mirrored in its long, slow arc that will continue long after your eyes have closed for the last time. And yet, there is comfort in that too. For if we are so small, then our burdens shrink as well. If we are temporary, then so are our fears. 3I Atlas reminds us not only of the impossible distances of the cosmos, but of the fragile beauty of the present moment. So whether you are an astronomer with equations, a parent with curious children, or a lone dreamer tracing light across the sky, the comet reaches you in the same way it stirs your heart. It unsettles your certainty. It makes you remember that we live not at the center of the universe, but as guests in its endless mystery. And maybe that is the greatest gift of all to feel, even for a moment, both infinitely small and deeply connected. The deeper scientists peer into the glowing trail of 3I Atlas, the more the data itself begins to read like a riddle. Telescopes spread across the globe from Chile's high desert to Hawaii's volcanic peaks, from orbiting satellites to radio arrays listening in silence, all turn toward this visitor. What they record is precise, measurable, undeniable. Yet, instead of clarity, the numbers spark confusion. The speed, for instance, is immense yet strangely inconsistent. Interstellar comets are expected to travel with steady momentum, unbound by our sun's gravity, passing through like ships coasting down a cosmic river. But 3I Atlas seems to hesitate, to quicken, to slow in ways that don't entirely fit the known models. Astronomers mark down the changes, scratching notes, running simulations, and still they whisper the word anomaly. Its orbit, too, is peculiar. Trajectories are normally predictable once enough data points are gathered. With each passing night, astronomers refine the curve of its path. But here, refinements do not converge neatly. Instead, each update seems to pull the comet's projected line in subtle, unexpected directions as if 3I Atlas resists being pinned down. It will pass near Mars, yes, but the exact dance it performs along the way feels as if something unseen is tugging at its sleeve. Then there is its brightness. A comet brightens as it nears the sun, its frozen surface vaporizing, releasing streams of dust and gas that reflect light. But the glow of 3I Atlas has pulsed oddly. At times, it has flared far more intensely than calculations suggest. At other times, it has dimmed abruptly, as if some invisible hand drew a curtain across it. Scientists call it outbursts, chalking it up to volatile pockets of ice rupturing unpredictably. Yet behind closed doors, some admit that the pattern of these pulses feels too regular, too deliberate, like a heartbeat echoing through the void. All this data, collected with such care, becomes both anchor and storm. On one hand, the comet is real, tangible, measurable, a body of rock and ice moving under gravity's command. On the other hand, each new set of numbers raises more questions than it answers. Why the uneven acceleration? Why the flickering brightness? Why does its orbit resist precise definition? In research centers, the mood is restless. One scientist calls it the most thrilling puzzle of their career. Another warns that speculation can too easily slip into fantasy. And yet, every so often, a phrase escapes even the most careful lips: what if this is something new? For the public, the reports filtered through newspapers and websites sound both exciting and vague. Strange behavior, the headlines say. Anomalous comet, the articles declare. For most, that is enough to spark imagination. For those who follow closely, it is enough to lose sleep. Because hidden in the dry language of data tables is the quiet suggestion that perhaps 3I Atlas is not behaving like any comet we have known. And so, as it moves steadily toward Mars, astronomers keep watch, measuring every flicker, every curve, every whisper of speed. They hope for answers, yet also dread what those answers might be. For if the numbers refuse to settle, then we may be forced to confront a possibility that lingers at the edge of reason, that what we are seeing is not just unusual, but something the universe has never shown us before. The word impossible is not one scientists use lightly. It is a word reserved for those moments when data collides with expectations so violently that nothing in the textbooks seems sufficient. With 3I Atlas, that word has appeared more than once in the notes of astronomers, not shouted but murmured, almost reluctantly, as though acknowledging it too clearly might make the mystery heavier. The first impossibility lies in its spin. Most comets tumble in predictable ways, their rotation shaped by their uneven surfaces and the release of gases as they approach the sunday. But 3I Atlas turns oddly, almost rhythmically, with sudden changes as though its body resists the usual tug of physics. Imagine a dancer pivoting mid-step, breaking the flow of the choreography. Something about its movement suggests forces at play we do not yet understand. Then there is the matter of acceleration. As sunlight warms a comet's surface, jets of vaporized ice burst forth, creating a natural propulsion that nudges the comet along. It is a simple, well-known process. Yet with 3I Atlas, the acceleration seems too smooth, too sustained, and at times too strong to be explained by ordinary outgassing. Some call it statistical error. Others say it is a matter of perspective. But the word impossible drifts in the silence between their arguments. The third puzzle glitters in its light. When astronomers measure the reflection of sunlight from its surface, the pattern is inconsistent with dust alone. Certain wavelengths spike, then vanish, as though the comet's surface carries patches of material unlike any we have seen before. Some compare it to polished metal, though they quickly add disclaimers. We are not saying it is artificial. Still, the echoes linger. A reflection that flares like a mirror where no mirror should exist. Put together, these anomalies form a picture that is both exhilarating and unsettling. If this were merely a comet of ice and stone, its behavior would fall into familiar patterns. Instead, it keeps slipping through the fingers of our theories. Each time scientists think they have solved one riddle, another arises. Each time they declare, "It is natural," the comet flickers, as if to say, "But not entirely." To the ordinary sky watcher, these impossibilities may not be obvious. They see a streak of light, beautiful and transient. But to the men and women hunched over spectrographs and orbital charts, it is as though the cosmos itself is whispering, "You have not learned everything yet." And perhaps that is the real impossibility, that in an age of satellites, particle accelerators, and space probes, a single comet can still make us feel as though we are standing barefoot at the edge of an ocean we cannot measure. 3I Atlas carries its riddles close, refusing to yield them easily. And in that refusal, it offers us something more precious than certainty, the reminder that wonder is not dead, and that the universe still has ways of making us tremble. When something strange crosses the night sky, the human mind immediately splits in two directions. One half whispers stories of omens, alien visitors, or messages written in fire. The other half insists on numbers, models, and rational explanations. With three Ayatollahs, these two halves have been in constant debate, and the battleground is science itself. For every oddity that seems to bend toward the unexplainable, there is a chorus of astronomers ready to propose mechanisms, hypotheses, and counterarguments. Yet none of them seem to quiet the storm. The first and most common explanation offered is outgassing. This is the process by which a comet warms as it approaches the sun, releasing gases trapped in its icy surface. These jets can alter a comet's motion, push it off course, and create irregular spin. On paper, it is a clean solution, but with three Ayatollahs, the details do not line up. The acceleration is too smooth, the brightness too rhythmic. Outgassing tends to be chaotic, messy, unpredictable. Here, scientists are seeing patterns that suggest something more consistent, something almost orchestrated. Another explanation touches on composition. Perhaps three Itlas is made of materials we have not yet studied up close. If its surface carries exotic ices, ammonia hydrates, methane clathrates, or compounds rare in our solar system, then its sublimation might look unusual from afar. If metals are embedded within, the reflections we detect could spike in strange ways. But skeptics quickly remind us, composition alone cannot fully explain the precise shifts in trajectory or the eerie steadiness of its anomalies. A third theory emerges from the shadows of astrophysics' tidal forces. As the comet passes near larger bodies, gravitational interactions could twist its path in subtle ways. Yet three Ayatollahs has not come close enough to any massive planet for tidal distortion to account for its peculiar movements. Mars lies ahead, but the anomalies began long before it reached the red planet's influence. Then comes the idea of fragmentation. Some astronomers speculate that three IATLAS may be splitting, shedding pieces too small for us to see directly. Such activity could produce shifts in brightness and minor accelerations. But fragmentation often leaves a comet unstable, with jagged trails and chaotic spins. Here, again, the behavior seems too neat, too deliberate, as if the comet knows how to keep itself whole while still playing tricks with our instruments. In the corridors of universities and observatories, the discussions grow animated. One researcher argues passionately for exotic ices, another insists that the instruments are misreading noise. A third leans back quietly and asks the question, no one wants to voice too loudly, what if it is not natural? The room falls silent, because even to suggest such a possibility risks ridicule. And yet, in private, more than one scientist has confessed to feeling an unease they cannot quite shake. Science thrives on skepticism, and so the official explanations remain cautious. Papers are published with careful language: anomalous behavior, unexplained deviation, possible compositional factors. Nothing definitive, nothing sensational. But beneath the academic tone is an unspoken acknowledgement. 3. Ayatollahs does not behave the way comets are supposed to behave. The public, meanwhile, spins its own theories. Online forums light up with speculation. Is it a probe sent by another civilization, camouflaged as a comet? Is it a fragment of something larger, perhaps even artificial? Is it carrying messages encoded in its flickering brightness? Like a cosmic Morse code, scientists shake their heads. Yet they too remember Oumuamua, how its elongated shape and unexplained acceleration led respected voices to consider, however briefly, the possibility of technology. There is also the philosophical angle. What if the comet is neither natural nor artificial, but something in between? A phenomenon born of physics so unfamiliar that our current categories simply fail. In that case, calling it just a comet is as misleading as calling a whale just a fish. Perhaps 3 Ayatlas belongs to a class of interstellar objects we have not yet named, visitors that travel with secrets about the chemistry of distant star systems, secrets locked in their icy hearts. And then there is silence, the silence of what we do not know. For all our instruments and data, we have only scratched the surface of interstellar science. Most of the universe lies beyond our reach. Entire oceans of knowledge may exist, waiting while we cling to a raft of theories. In this context, 3 Ayatlas is both a puzzle and a teacher, reminding us that humility is as vital to science as certainty. Imagine sitting in a lecture hall where the brightest minds of our age gather to debate this comet. Charts flicker on screens, equations fill whiteboards. Each argument builds on centuries of knowledge, and yet no answer satisfies. At the end, the room grows quiet, because the truth is, the comet has not surrendered its meaning, not yet. And perhaps that is the point. Sometimes the universe gives us not answers but questions, and it is the act of questioning that deepens us. So tonight, as you drift into rest, hold that thought. Science will continue to chase explanations. Hypotheses will rise and fall. Instruments will collect their endless streams of numbers. But in the space between certainty and wonder lies the real story that we are still capable of being surprised, still capable of awe, still capable of admitting that the universe is stranger than our best equations. 3 Ayatlas has become more than an interstellar visitor. It is a mirror, reflecting not only the light of the sun but the limits of our understanding. And in that reflection, we see both our ignorance and our courage. The courage to keep looking up, even when the sky offers us the impossible. For as long as humans have had eyes to look upward, comets have carried weight heavier than stone and ice. They have been the burning punctuation marks of history, appearing suddenly, glowing fiercely, then vanishing back into the dark, leaving behind fear, awe, and story. Before the age of telescopes and scientific models, they were not celestial visitors to be measured, but messages to be interpreted, and what messages they seemed to bear. In the chronicles of ancient China, comets were recorded with meticulous detail. Court astronomers kept careful track, sketching tails, measuring brightness, and declaring meanings. A long-tailed comet might warn of famine. A sudden bright streak could predict the death of an emperor. The Chinese did not treat these appearances lightly. They believed the heavens and earth were bound together by invisible threads, and when those threads trembled, rulers were expected to act. A comet, in this worldview, was a cosmic letter addressed to the throne. Across the Mediterranean, the Greeks and Romans shared a similar awe, though their interpretations often leaned toward fate and war. Aristotle once argued that comets were merely atmospheric phenomena, like fiery exhalations in the sky. Yet even as he wrote, common people and generals alike saw them as harbingers of upheaval. The historian Pliny the Elder described them as long-haired stars that foreshadowed revolutions, assassinations, and disasters. Julius Caesar's assassination was said to have been marked by a brilliant comet, interpreted by many as the dictator's soul ascending or as a sign of chaos unleashed. Medieval Europe carried the tradition further. The Bayeux Tapestry, stitched in the 11th century, famously depicts Halley's comet streaking above King Harold of England just before the Norman invasion in 1066. To the soldiers and peasants who saw it, the comet was no mere spectacle. It was a divine signal, declaring that kingdoms were about to shift, that battles were already written in the stars. When famine struck, when disease spread, when wars erupted, a comet's glow was folded neatly into the explanation. It was the universe itself casting judgment. In the Islamic world, scholars also recorded comets, blending careful observation with cultural significance. While some saw them as signs of divine will, others noted their recurring patterns, suspecting they were natural objects that could be predicted. Still, the aura of mystery clung to them. A comet was not an everyday event. It demanded attention, both spiritual and intellectual. The Aztecs, too, saw them as omens. Records from the early 16th century describe comets appearing before the Spanish conquest of Mexico, interpreted by priests as warnings of catastrophe. In their cosmology, the sky was alive with gods, and fiery streaks across the heavens were messengers of change, change that often arrived in blood and fire. Even in cultures where comets were not seen as threats, they were rarely neutral. To the Polynesians, who navigated by stars, an unfamiliar light in the sky was both a challenge and a sign. To the Maori, comets could represent the souls of ancestors, burning brightly as they journeyed across the firmament. To the Inuit, they were torches carried by spirits, lighting their way across the night. What unites all these visions is not uniform belief, but shared intensity. No one ever looked at a comet and shrugged. Whether as omen, ancestor, godly messenger, or cosmic fire, comets were never treated as meaningless. They were woven into the stories people told about themselves and their place in the cosmos. And that sense has not disappeared. Even now, in an era of equations and spacecraft, the sudden arrival of a comet still quickens the pulse. Halley's Comet returned in 1986, met not with dread but with anticipation. Around the world, people set alarms, gathered in fields, and bought small telescopes, eager to witness what their ancestors had feared. When Comet Neowise blazed across the skies in 2020, millions turned their gaze upward, phones raised, capturing its ghostly tail in pixels. Social media overflowed with awe. It was no longer a signal of disaster, but it was still a signal. Something in us still wants to read the sky as a text written for us. So what happens when the comet in question is not just another of our solar system's icy wanderers, but a visitor from the stars beyond 3i Atlas, has already picked up the old mantle of omen in some corners of the public imagination? Conspiracy theories spread quickly online, tying its arrival to political events, natural disasters, even personal fortunes. Astrologers, ever ready to read meaning in the heavens, have drawn charts and written predictions. They may not speak the same language as ancient Chinese astronomers or medieval priests, but the spirit is the same. The human heart cannot help but weave story out of light. And yet, to see this through the eyes of history is to recognize a pattern. Each generation encounters comets and dresses them in the clothing of their fears and hopes. A medieval peasant saw plague. An Aztec priest saw conquest. A 21st century dreamer might see aliens or destiny or cosmic wonder. The comet itself does not change. What changes is us, the stories we need, the meanings we crave. 3i Atlas, then, is not only an object of science, it is a mirror reflecting our old instincts. We still crave omens. We still want the heavens to speak. And whether we admit it or not, when we gaze up at that faint glow racing past Mars, a small voice inside us still whispers, what does it mean? The answer may be nothing. It may be ice and dust obeying gravity, nothing more. But the history of comets teaches us that meaning is not always in the object. Sometimes it is in the gaze. Sometimes it is in the story. And perhaps the real omen of 3i Atlas is not what it carries, but what it awakens in us, the reminder that we are still storytellers under the stars, searching for signs in the dark. If history shows us that comets have long been feared as omens, then culture shows us that they have also been cherished as symbols, woven into myth and spirituality across continents. To the human imagination, a comet was never just a lump of rock and ice. It was a brushstroke across the heavens, a reminder that the sky was alive and unpredictable, capable of writing messages with fire. With 3i Atlas glowing on the horizon of Mars, these echoes from the past return not as superstition, but as part of the deeper human tendency to read meaning into light. In Polynesian traditions, comets were integrated into the navigational lore that guided voyagers across the Pacific. The sky was their map, and anything unusual demanded attention. A bright streak might be seen as a guiding ancestor, its tail pointing toward new lands. To sailors in fragile canoes on vast oceans, such symbolism was not decoration. It was survival. The heavens were a living text, and comets were punctuation that urged boldness or caution. Among the Norse, comets were sometimes folded into the imagery of Ragnarok, the prophesied end of the world. A fiery serpent streaking across the sky could be seen as the sword of a god, a sign of the cosmic battles to come. For cultures steeped in stories of fire, ice, and celestial war, the sudden appearance of a burning visitor fit naturally into the mythic rhythm. A comet was not merely an object, it was a character in the great story of existence. The Mayans, with their advanced astronomy, also linked comets with divine cycles. Their codices, rich with symbolic drawings, often showed star-like figures trailing fire, interpreted as messages from deities. A comet's appearance could trigger rituals of cleansing, offerings, or new construction. For them, the sky was not a silent backdrop, but a dialogue. To ignore a comet was to ignore a god. Even in cultures with less elaborate cosmologies, comets were never neutral. In Japan, they were sometimes called broom stars, sweeping across the heavens as though cleaning the world. In Siberia, they were torches carried by spirits. In West Africa, they were arrows shot by the gods, streaking across the dark to pierce the human world with messages. Each vision was shaped by local landscapes and beliefs, yet the common thread was awe. A comet was an event, a rupture in the normal order. This cultural layering still shapes how we feel today. Even if we no longer fear famine when a comet appears, we still sense that something profound is happening. Films and novels use comets as symbols of fate, love, or catastrophe. From Night of the Comet to modern science fiction epics, the image of a glowing traveler has become shorthand for destiny. And now, with 3 Ayatlas, we find ourselves returning instinctively to that symbolic lens. Scientists may measure acceleration, but the public dreams in metaphor. The comet becomes an omen, a messenger, a stage light, revealing our anxieties and hopes. Social media accelerates this ancient process. When images of 3 Ayatlas first appeared online, countless captions framed it as a sign. Some called it an alien probe, others called it a warning of environmental collapse. Still others saw it as a symbol of hope that in a fractured world, the cosmos still sends wonders to remind us we are part of something vast. Thousands of years after Chinese scribes recorded comets in bamboo scrolls, people are still doing the same, only now with tweets and hashtags. The medium has changed, the impulse has not. Spiritual movements too have taken notice. Some New Age circles describe 3 Ayatlas as an awakening force, aligning cosmic energies. Meditation groups hold vigils beneath the night sky, imagining the comet as a carrier of transformation. Skeptics may smile, but the underlying truth is harder to dismiss. The comet has touched people not only as a scientific event, but as a spiritual presence. We cannot help but search for meaning in its glow. This tendency speaks to something deep in the human psyche. Carl Jung once suggested that the cosmos often provides archetypes, images that rise from the collective unconscious. Comets, with their sudden brilliance and fleeting presence, embody the archetype of disruption. They arrive without warning, burn brightly, then disappear like messengers who speak once and vanish. Whether we frame them as gods, ancestors, or anomalies, we respond to the archetype with reverence and fear. And so, as 3 Ayatlas draws close to Mars, the spiritual echoes of comets resonate again. For some, it is a chance to recall old myths, to feel connected to ancestors who once watched Halley's comet with trembling hands. For others, it is a symbol of impermanence. No matter how stable we think our lives are, a streak of light can remind us that everything is fleeting. For still others, it is a call to humility, a reminder that our species, with all its technology, is still a small audience beneath a vast and living sky. The comet has become a bridge. It links the astronomer with the poet, the skeptic with the dreamer, the scientist measuring spectra with the child making wishes. It connects modern data to ancient rituals, satellites to temples, graphs to myths, and in that bridging lies its true power. It reminds us that even as knowledge expands, the human hunger for meaning endures. Perhaps this is why comets have never faded from culture. They are not just icy rocks passing by. They are reminders that the universe is not silent, that the sky itself has the power to break routine and stir our deepest questions. When 3I streaks past Mars, we may not sacrifice animals or crown new kings in response, but in quiet ways, in whispered conversations, in online posts, in long moments of staring upward, we are doing what our ancestors did. We are weaving story. And maybe that is the greatest legacy of comets. They do not just move through the heavens, they move through us. They remind us that we are meaning makers, storytellers beneath the stars, forever searching for patterns in the fire above. 3I is the latest spark to ignite that ancient instinct. And as it burns its path across the sky, we once again become part of a chorus older than memory, voices lifted toward the unknown, asking not just what is it, but what does it mean? Mars, the red planet. For centuries, it has haunted the human imagination like no other world in our sky. Bright, red, and watchful, it has been called the god of war, the bringer of conflict, the stage of possible futures. And now, into that old arena, 3I moves closer, its orbit bending toward Mars, as though drawn to the planet not just by gravity, but by destiny. On the surface, the mathematics are clear. Mars is simply in the path. Its orbit and the trajectory of 3I cross at a near point, nothing more. But when we allow ourselves to look with older eyes, those of poets, historians, and dreamers, the approach of this interstellar visitor to Mars feels uncanny, layered with meaning that data alone cannot erase. Why Mars? For thousands of years, every time humanity lifted its gaze to the rust-red dot in the sky, it carried weight. The Babylonians associated it with Nergal, their god of war and plague. To the Romans, it was Mars himself, divine embodiment of conflict. Even the name we use today is soaked in the mythology of battle. The planet's color iron oxide dust scattering sunlight looked to early watchers like fire, like blood, like the heat of anger. To see a comet, blazing like a sword, drawing near this fiery world, is to feel the old resonance awaken again. History offers examples of Mars paired with celestial events. Ancient chroniclers often recorded strange lights or conjunctions near the red planet as signs of upheaval. In some traditions, Mars was considered the ruler of fates, and when unusual stars or comets approached it, kingdoms trembled. Even in the Renaissance, astrologers pored over charts, declaring that Mars combined with bright comets meant war was inevitable. And though we have moved far from such beliefs, it is difficult to stand beneath the sky today, watching 3I bend its orbit toward Mars without recalling those echoes. But beyond symbolism, there is science. Mars has always been a stage for cosmic drama. Its surface, scarred with craters, tells of countless impacts. Entire valleys, like Valles Marineris, may have been shaped by ancient upheavals. Its moons, Phobos and Deimos, are captured asteroids, remnants of celestial wanderers pulled too close. In many ways, Mars is already a museum of cosmic encounters. The approach of 3I is simply the newest chapter in a very old book. Scientists are watching closely. If the comet passes near enough, Mars's thin atmosphere may record traces small changes in chemistry, a faint dusting of particles. The orbiters circling Mars could detect the event, adding data to the mystery. Imagine while we on Earth watch from afar, our robotic emissaries on and around Mars may already be listening, catching whispers from this interstellar traveler as it sweeps by. The thought itself is staggering. Humanity has outposts on another world, capable of studying a visitor from beyond the stars. It is the kind of alignment ancient cultures would have called divine. Yet the strangeness deepens. For many, Mars has always been the planet of possibility, the one we dream of colonizing, the one we imagine as our second home. To have 3I approach it now, in our own lifetime, feels almost like a message. A visitor from beyond, arriving just as we too prepare to step outward into the solar system. It is as though the cosmos is staging an encounter, setting Mars as the meeting place, a midpoint between our fragile world and the vastness beyond. There are, of course, rational voices urging restraint. They remind us that comets follow gravity, not symbolism, that Mars is no more special than Venus or Jupiter in this regard, that any meaning we see is projected by us, not written in the stars. And yet, meaning is never so easily dismissed. For every scientist calmly calculating perihelion, there are millions of dreamers who see something more. They look at the comet, at Mars, and they feel that timeless shiver this matters. Perhaps the truth lies in both directions. Scientifically, 3I Atlas is a comet on a trajectory that intersects with Mars's neighborhood. Spiritually, culturally, psychologically, it is a convergence of symbols too rich to ignore: war and wonder, blood and ice. A world that may one day host us, and a traveler from beyond reminding us of the infinite. As the comet closes in, astronomers will keep their vigil, spectrometers will scan its glow, radio dishes will listen for whispers, orbiters around Mars will take careful readings. But for the rest of us, the approach is not just about data. It is about standing in a tradition that stretches back to the first storytellers who looked up at Mars and saw a god, a warrior, a fate-bearer. To see a comet draw near that same red light is to feel ourselves inside a story older than history. And maybe that is what 3I Atlas gives us, above all not proof of aliens, not certainty of omens, but a chance to remember that the universe is a stage of coincidences so grand they feel like design. Mars and the comet are meeting now, in our lifetime, under our gaze. Whether accident or message, science or myth, it is an encounter that binds us again to the sky. When you close your eyes tonight, imagine the red glow of Mars and the icy flame of 3I Atlas passing close, ancient symbols brushing shoulders in the endless dark. You may feel small, but you will also feel connected to history, to myth, to the cosmos itself. And that, perhaps, is the true meaning of this approach. Mars has always been more than a planet. It is a mirror, a crimson one, casting back to us our deepest fears, our boldest dreams, and our unshakable hunger to search for life beyond Earth. As 3I Atlas bends its path toward this ancient neighbor, the symbolism becomes inescapable. A visitor from the stars brushes close to the very world we have long imagined as our second home, our battlefield of myths, and perhaps our proving ground for survival. To ancient eyes, Mars was the god of war. Its rusty glow seemed like a permanent wound in the heavens. Where Jupiter symbolized kingship and Venus embodied love, Mars was conflict. And humanity, never far from the rhythms of violence, saw itself reflected there. Battles were timed according to its position. Rulers consulted astrologers to see whether Mars favored their armies. In India, the planet was known as Mangala, associated with strength and aggression. In Greece and Rome, it was Ares and Mars, blood-soaked deities watching over fields of strife. The fact that its red hue comes from iron oxide is almost too fitting. Mars is literally painted in rust, the same metal that forged swords and shields. But Mars is not only war. As telescopes grew sharper, humanity began to imagine canals etched across its surface. In the late 19th century, astronomer Percival Lowell sketched great lines and networks, convinced they were built by Martians struggling to save a dying world. The idea turned out to be illusion, but it awakened something enduring: the belief that Mars might host life, or at least once did. For more than a century, Mars has been the canvas upon which we project our longing not to be alone. When 3I Atlas veers near Mars, that longing stirs again. Could a visitor from beyond glance at a world we have already marked as special, as though to confirm our obsession? Science has since uncovered Mars's true face: a barren desert world, yes, but not entirely dead. Its dry riverbeds whisper of ancient oceans. Its polar caps glisten with frozen water. Beneath its soil, we suspect pockets of briny water may still flow. Rovers like Curiosity and Perseverance crawl across its surface, sniffing for organic molecules. Orbiters measure methane plumes that rise and vanish mysteriously. Each discovery feels like a breadcrumb, leading us toward the truth that Mars may yet harbor life, if not today, then in the deep past. The red planet is a mirror because it forces us to confront the possibility that life is not a miracle unique to Earth, but a phenomenon that emerges whenever conditions permit. Now add to this mirror the reflection of 3I Atlas, a comet not from our solar system but from the galaxy at large. Its icy body may hold molecules forged in distant star nurseries. Its dust may contain traces of chemistry alien to us. As it passes near Mars, the symbolism intensifies. Here is a messenger from the stars drawing close to the planet we already see as a cradle of potential life. Mars becomes the meeting place, the intersection of our search for the familiar and the arrival of the foreign. One world may hold clues to life within our solar system, the other brings whispers of chemistry from beyond. For those who dream in metaphor, the alignment is irresistible. Mars reflects humanity's inner conflicts and ambitions. 3I Atlas reflects the outer vastness and the unknown. Together, they stage a kind of dialogue, war and peace, familiarity and mystery, the local and the interstellar. If Earth is our home, then Mars is our mirror, and the comet is a stranger knocking on the mirror's edge. There is another layer here, one rooted in psychology. Mars is the planet we dream of conquering. Space agencies and private companies alike plan missions, imagining colonies beneath domes, greenhouses in lava tubes, and explorers stepping across its red dust. It is where we project our survival, our hope of enduring if Earth fails us. And yet, we also fear it. Its thin atmosphere, its lethal radiation, its frigid nights remind us of how fragile we are. Mars mirrors not only our hope, but our vulnerability. A comet sweeping by, unpredictable and strange, amplifies that vulnerability. It is as if the universe itself reminds us, even as you dream of new worlds, you remain small beneath the cosmos. And yet, there is comfort in this too. To watch 3I Atlas approach Mars is to feel part of a story larger than war, larger than colonization, larger than fear. It is to realize that the mirror does not only reflect conflict, it also reflects resilience. Humanity has always dreamed of reaching Mars because we are restless, because we cannot accept boundaries. Every rover that lands, every orbit calculated, every image beamed back is proof of that persistence. Perhaps 3I Atlas, in brushing near, is not a threat but a reminder that our story is still unfolding, that our mirror still has depths we have not yet seen. Think of the generations who looked at Mars and wondered. Think of the generations who will one day walk on its soil, carving footprints into rust. And then think of this moment, brief and fragile, when a traveler from interstellar space sweeps past, and for an instant Mars reflects not only our ambitions but the cosmos itself. That is the true mirror, not of war, not of conquest, but of connection. So as you drift tonight into rest, hold that image, Mars glowing red, the comet's tail streaming nearby, two symbols layered across the heavens. One is the world we have always dreamed of, the other is the universe reminding us that we are not alone. Together, they form a mirror more powerful than any telescope, a mirror in which we see both our ancient fears and our eternal longing. And in that reflection, perhaps we glimpse not just what Mars is, but who we are. What if 3IATAATLACE is not a coincidence? The question hangs in the air like the comet itself, bright, unsettling, impossible to ignore. We are accustomed to thinking of celestial events as random intersections of gravity and time, the cold mechanics of orbital dynamics. But every so often, a thought slips through the cracks of our rational armor. What if this moment is not an accident? What if the universe is whispering? To ask such a question is to step beyond science and into philosophy, a territory as old as humanity itself. Long before we knew about atoms or galaxies, People stood under the night sky and assumed meaning. They did not see randomness, they saw intention. The heavens were alive, purposeful, filled with signs. In a way, modern science has trained us out of that instinct. We are told the cosmos does not care, that comets do not arrive for reasons, that planets do not watch us. And yet, when a visitor like 3I Atlas arrives just as our species struggles with war, climate change, and existential doubt, the old thought reawakens. Is this timing truly random? One way to approach this is through the lens of the anthropic principle. This principle suggests that the universe appears fine-tuned for life, not because it was designed that way, but because if it weren't, we wouldn't be here to notice. But even within that neat loop, questions linger. Why this fine-tuning? Why these coincidences? The anthropic principle explains our observation, but it does not silence our wonder. In the same way, science may tell us that 3I Atlas is merely on a path carved by physics. Still, the deeper mind wonders if there is more, if the comet is less an accident and more a reminder woven into the fabric of existence. Consider how human beings interpret events. We are meaning-making creatures. When coincidences happen, meeting a stranger who shares your birthday, receiving a phone call at the exact moment you were thinking of someone, you feel the tug of significance. Rationally, you know it is chance. Emotionally, you cannot help but see a pattern. The arrival of 3I Atlas near Mars is like a cosmic version of that tug. Rationally, it is orbital mechanics. Emotionally, it feels like a message, a traveler from the stars choosing this moment, this planet, this gaze. Philosophers have long debated whether the universe contains inherent meaning or whether we simply project it. To the existentialists, meaning is something we create, not something the cosmos provides. To the mystics, meaning is everywhere, waiting for us to notice. 3I Atlas becomes a test case for both. If it is nothing more than a comet, then the meaning is ours to invent. If it is something more, then perhaps the universe itself is capable of intention, an idea as terrifying as it is comforting. There is also the possibility that the reminder is not external at all, but internal. The comet may not be a messenger, but the very act of seeing it as one is the message. The reminder lies not in the object, but in our reaction. We are reminded that we are small, fragile, and temporary. We are reminded that the sky above us is not a static ceiling, but a living theatre. We are reminded that despite centuries of progress, we still tremble at mysteries we cannot explain. That trembling, that wonder, is the point. Some thinkers might call this cosmic humility. To look at 3I Atlas and feel the weight of insignificance is not defeat but invitation. It invites us to step outside the narrow frame of daily worries and recognize ourselves as participants in a vast, ongoing story. If the universe has meaning, then we are inside it. If it does not, then we are the ones who must give it meaning. Either way, the comet serves as the catalyst. Religious traditions echo this thought in different keys. In Christianity, celestial signs are often seen as divine reminders. In Buddhism, impermanence is the ultimate lesson, and a fleeting comet is its perfect teacher. In indigenous cosmologies, the sky is alive, filled with ancestors and spirits. Each visitor a reminder of continuity. From each angle, 3I Atlas does the same work. It pulls our eyes upward. It disrupts our certainty. It makes us pause. And in that pause, philosophy begins. Even if we resist the idea of intention, we can still frame the comet as a cosmic mirror. It reflects back to us the questions we carry but rarely voice. What is our place in the universe? Are we alone? Do our struggles matter? In the face of infinity, the comet does not answer. It cannot, but it forces us to sit with the questions, and in doing so, it reminds us that uncertainty is not a flaw but a feature of existence. And maybe, just maybe, the timing matters after all. Not because 3I Atlas was sent, but because we were here to see it. Out of billions of years, out of countless civilizations that could have risen and fallen unnoticed, it is us humans in this century, with telescopes and satellites who witness this third interstellar visitor. That alone is extraordinary. The reminder may not be from the universe, but from ourselves, to treasure the rare, to honor the fleeting, to look up while we can. So what if 3I Atlas is not a coincidence? Then it is a sign. Not necessarily a sign of doom or aliens or destiny, but a sign of possibility. A sign that wonder is still alive. A sign that even in a world consumed by distraction, the sky can still command our attention. And in that sense, it is the most powerful reminder of all that meaning is not handed to us. It is sparked when we choose to see. As the comet drifts past Mars, the reminder lingers. We may forget its name in a decade. We may reduce it to equations in dusty papers. But for those who pause now, who feel the pull of its impossible presence, it will remain more than ice and rock. It will remain the moment the universe seemed to whisper, "Remember your place, remember your wonder." Whenever science finds itself pressed against the edges of the unknown, imagination rushes in. For centuries, comets were wrapped in myth and legend. Today, in an age of satellites and probes, they are often wrapped in speculation of another kind, science fiction. And 3I Atlas, with its impossible quirks and interstellar origin, has become a canvas on which countless possibilities are painted. Possibilities that stretch beyond natural law and into the realm of watchers, probes, and civilizations older than our own. Let us begin with the most provocative idea, 3I Atlas is not a comet at all, but a probe. When Oumuamua swept through in 2017, some respected scientists, including Harvard's Avi Loeb, dared to suggest that its elongated shape and unexplained acceleration could be evidence of artificial design. The idea caused a storm dismissed by many as sensational, but whispered by others as perhaps not impossible. If one interstellar object could spark such debate, why not this third one? Could 3I Atlas be more than dust and ice? Perhaps a disguised machine, coasting silently between stars? Consider what such a probe would imply. For an alien civilization, comets are perfect carriers. They can be mistaken for natural objects. They require no propulsion once flung into space, and they can travel for millions of years without raising suspicion. If you wanted to scatter silent messengers across the galaxy, you would hide them in plain sight, tucked within the icy shells of comets. Some might carry instruments. Some might simply drift, waiting to be noticed. A few, like 3I Atlas, might draw close enough to inhabited worlds to awaken our suspicion. Others imagine something subtler, a watcher, not a machine with cameras and antennas, but a biological or hybrid construct blending with its environment. Could 3I Atlas be seeded with dormant life, frozen until the right conditions awaken it? The idea echoes panspermia, the theory that life on Earth itself may have arrived via cometary delivery. Perhaps we are not looking at an intruder, but a sibling, carrying the same chemical seeds that once gave rise to us. Its passage near Mars could be coincidence, or it could be a deliberate scattering dropping spores, data, or messages on a world we have long hoped to find alive. From there, the speculations grow stranger. Some see comets not as carriers of probes, but as the tools of cosmic gardeners. What if advanced civilizations use comets as seeds, hurling them across space to fertilize barren systems? To us, 3I Atlas looks chaotic, anomalous. To them, it could be perfectly controlled, steered by technologies we cannot detect, nudged gently into orbits that let them skim planets, deposit elements, and move on. Perhaps Earth itself was once touched by such a gardener long before history began. Others stretch the speculation further still. What if comets are not vehicles, but civilizations themselves, massive, slow-moving habitats, carrying beings who live in deep time, their lives stretching across millennia? To us, the glow of 3I Atlas is gas and dust. To them, it might be the exhaust of hidden engines, or the breath of vast enclosed biomes within. The idea sounds absurd, until we remember that imagination is always absurd before it becomes real. Once, heavier than air flight sounded absurd. Once, the idea of visiting Mars did too. The impossible becomes possible in time. But even without alien pilots or watchers, the science fiction lens still carries power. It allows us to treat 3-eye atlas as more than anomaly. It allows us to dream. Imagine it is a probe. Who sent it? Were they like us, curious, restless, desperate to know if they were alone? Or were they beyond us, minds so vast that we cannot imagine their motives? Imagine it is carrying a message. What language would it use? What form would that message take? Radio waves, patterns of light, chemical codes etched into dust. Could we even recognize it if we saw it? And then comes the haunting possibility: what if it was sent long ago by a civilization that no longer exists? 3-eye atlas could be the fossil of intention, drifting through eternity long after its creators vanished. If so, then to encounter it is to brush against the ghost of intelligence, to realize that civilizations too can be fleeting, leaving only fragments in the dark. Of course, the rational mind resists. The scientist inside us says, these are fantasies. The anomalies can be explained by physics we do not yet understand. The comet is natural, nothing more. But the storyteller inside us refuses to let go, because even if 3-eye atlas is just a comet, the act of imagining it as more tells us something vital about ourselves. It shows that we still hunger to believe we are part of a larger drama. It shows that wonder is not satisfied with numbers alone. Science fiction, after all, has often preceded science fact. The dream of rockets came before rockets. The dream of submarines came before submarines. To imagine 3-eye atlas as a probe is not to abandon science, but to extend it, to admit that discovery often begins as story. Perhaps one day we will send our own disguised messengers into the void, comets carrying human-made instruments launched toward alien suns. Perhaps, in that distant future, another species will look at one of our probes and whisper, could this be natural, or is it something more? So let the speculation run. Let us picture watchers hidden in the tail, messages coded in its glow, civilizations carved into its ice. Even if none of it is true, the act of imagining awakens us. It sharpens our questions. It reminds us that the line between science and science fiction is not a wall but a bridge. As 3-eye atlas sweeps past Mars, most likely it will leave no signal, no revelation, only data. But the stories we tell about it will remain. And in those stories lies a truth deeper than the comet itself, that humanity is ready, even eager, to see itself as part of a galactic conversation, to imagine watchers, gardeners, and travelers beyond. The comet may vanish, but the questions it awakens will linger, guiding us as surely as myths once did. Perhaps one day, when we ourselves send probes disguised as comets, we will remember this moment, the moment we looked up at 3-eye atlas and wondered if someone else had already done the same. When astronomers speak of data, the public often imagines neat columns of numbers, lifeless and sterile. But for those who spend their nights staring at the heavens, data often feels alive, full of whispers, rhythms, and puzzles that breathe mystery into the cold precision of measurement. With 3-eye atlas, this truth has never been clearer, for hidden in the streams of light curves and spectral lines are flickers that refuse to behave, patterns that hint at a story more complicated than simple rock and ice. The first anomalies came from brightness variations. A comet's glow is expected to fluctuate as sunlight strikes jets of gas and dust erupting from its surface. These variations are usually chaotic, irregular, but with 3-eye atlas, telescopes began to record something stranger: pulses of light that seemed almost rhythmic, flaring and dimming at intervals too regular to dismiss as coincidence. For days, weeks, then months, the pattern persisted. At first it was written off as error, the noise of instruments or atmosphere. But when the same pulses appeared across observatories separated by oceans, skepticism grew thin. Then came the spectral signatures. By splitting the comet's light into its component wavelengths, astronomers can identify the chemicals within. Water ice, carbon monoxide, methane all leave fingerprints in the spectrum. Yet when 3I Atlas was observed, certain wavelengths spiked and fell in ways that puzzled even the most cautious researchers. At times, reflections suggested metals that should not appear in such concentration. At other times, the light seemed to scatter as though bouncing off surfaces smoother than dust, more like polished facets than crumbled ice. What made the puzzle more unsettling was the timing. The pulses of brightness sometimes aligned with changes in the spectrum, as though both were part of the same rhythm. To some, it looked eerily like signaling, though no one dared use the word signal in a published paper. To call it that would be to step beyond science into speculation, a leap most professionals avoid. And yet, privately, the conversations turned more daring. What if this flicker is deliberate? What if 3I Atlas is trying to say something? Radio astronomers joined the vigil, training massive dishes toward the comet in search of transmissions. The results were inconclusive. No clear signals emerged, only faint, static whispers of background noise. Yet even the silence carried weight. If 3I Atlas were artificial, perhaps it would not speak in ways we expect. Perhaps its communication is encoded in its very behavior, in the flickers of light, in the subtle nudges of its orbit, in the chemical breadcrumbs it leaves behind. For the public, news of strange rhythms spread quickly. Headlines shouted about alien messages, while cautious scientists scrambled to temper expectations. Natural explanations likely exist, they insisted. We do not have evidence of intelligence. And still, the fascination grew. Online forums buzzed with amateur sleuths plotting the brightness curves, searching for hidden codes, comparing the pulses to Morse signals or binary sequences. It was as though the comet had become a Rorschach test for the imagination. Some saw noise, others saw intent. But step back, and the deeper truth emerges. Whether or not the rhythms are deliberate, they have already altered us. They force us to listen differently, to look closer, to ask harder questions. This is how discovery often begins, not with certainty, but with doubt. Not with proof, but with patterns that refuse to fade. Consider the history of astronomy. When pulsars were first detected in the 1960 seconds, their precise, regular beats were so uncanny that scientists nicknamed them LGM, Little Green Men. Of course, they turned out to be natural, the lighthouses of neutron stars spinning at furious speeds. But in that moment of uncertainty, humanity brushed against the possibility of intelligence beyond itself. The same may be true of 3I Atlas. Its flickers may one day be explained by exotic ices or surface fractures. But right now, they remind us of the boundary we inhabit, the thin line between known and unknown. And there is another layer still, the psychological. When people look at these datasets and imagine messages, they reveal something about ourselves. We crave connection. We long for the universe to speak back. Even if the flickers are nothing more than gas and dust, we interpret them as whispers because we are wired to find meaning. In that sense, the signal is real, not from the comet, but from our own minds, echoing across the void. Yet the possibility lingers. The rhythms persist. The comet shines brighter as it nears Mars, its pulses more insistent, its spectral puzzles more stubborn. The more data we collect, the more the mystery deepens. Scientists tread carefully, their language restrained. But the public feels no such need. To them, 3I Atlas has already become the comet that might be speaking, the visitor that may be more than what it seems. Perhaps the truth will never be known. Perhaps 3I Atlas will pass into darkness, leaving only archived graphs and whispered speculation. Or perhaps, in the faint heartbeat of its flicker, we will one day recognize a pattern too precise to dismiss. Either way, it has already given us something profound, the reminder that the universe still has the power to make us lean forward, to hold our breath, to wonder if we are being addressed across the stars. And that may be the real message, not words or codes hidden in light, but the invitation to listen, to pause in our noise-filled world, and remember that the cosmos, silent though it may seem, is filled with mysteries that refuse to be ignored. 3i Atlas flickers, and in its flicker we are reminded the story of the universe is not finished, and perhaps we are not the only ones turning its pages. From observatories and research stations, 3i Atlas is a stream of numbers, spectral lines, and graphs glowing on screens. But for the rest of the world, for people who do not live in the rhythm of telescopes, it is something very different. It is a headline. It is a picture on social media. It is a sudden streak of light that interrupts the ordinary pace of life. And in those moments, 3i Atlas stops being only a comet. It becomes part of the human story, shaping emotions, inspiring awe, and, in some cases, stirring fear. Imagine the parent walking with a child through a city park late at night. The child looks up, points, and asks what that strange glowing streak might be. The parent, who only half remembers reading an article about an interstellar comet, shrugs, then smiles, realizing they are standing together in a moment that will be remembered for years. For the child, 3i Atlas becomes the comet they once saw when they were small, the first brush with the vastness of the universe. For the parent, it is a chance to feel, if only briefly, like an explorer again. Now picture an elderly couple, sitting quietly on the porch of a rural home, far from the glare of city lights. They have lived long lives, seen wars and peace, progress and decline, yet when they look up at the comet, they fall silent. It is not fear they feel, but continuity. This streak of ice and dust has been traveling for millions of years, and somehow it has arrived in their lifetime, just when they were there to see it. They whisper to each other about how small they are, how large the cosmos must be, and for once the worries of everyday life fade into perspective. But not all reactions are peaceful. Some feel unease. In online forums, people post anxious questions. Could it hit us? Could it affect Mars in a way that changes our solar system? What if it is not a comet at all? Theories spiral quickly, and fear follows close behind. A glowing streak in the sky may not mean war or famine anymore, but in the modern mind it can mean alien probes, government cover-ups, or cosmic threats. Human imagination, when stirred by mystery, rarely sits still. It rushes toward both wonder and dread. For artists, dreamers, and poets, 3i Atlas is inspiration. Painters set canvases against the night sky, trying to capture its faint shimmer. Musicians write songs about travelers from the stars. Writers craft poems comparing its tale to a brushstroke across eternity. On social media, photographs of the comet circulate with captions that range from awe to humor, from spiritual reflections to jokes about end times. The comet becomes a shared canvas, one upon which millions project their own feelings. News outlets add their layer, often straddling the line between scientific caution and public appetite for drama. Headlines speak of mysteries and anomalies. Commentators debate whether this is a breakthrough or just another comet. Some programs bring in astronomers to explain the science, only to pivot towards speculation because speculation draws more eyes. Ordinary viewers absorb these fragments, and in doing so, their emotional landscape shifts. The comet is no longer just in the sky. It is in living rooms, on phones, in conversations at dinner tables, and in every reaction, whether fearful or fascinated, lies the same truth: people feel connected. A comet is not a private event. It is something that sweeps across the entire Earth's sky, visible to anyone who lifts their gaze. In that sense, 3i Atlas is a rare unifier. For a few nights, billions of people share the same sight. They may not agree on its meaning, but they cannot deny its presence. It is an invitation to look up, together, across borders and languages. There are stories of children in crowded cities climbing to rooftops just to catch a glimpse, of farmers pausing in their fields to watch, of prisoners looking through barred windows at the same comet their jailers see. For a moment, the divisions of human life shrink before the immensity of the cosmos. And even if those moments are brief, They leave impressions that last a lifetime. But there is another layer too, a quieter one. For many, seeing the comet does not stir grand questions or cosmic fear. It stirs something simpler: humility. Standing beneath a streak of light that has traveled farther than we can comprehend, people remember their own smallness. Problems that once seemed overwhelming feel lighter. Arguments fade, perspective widens, and in that humility some find comfort. Of course, not everyone notices. Millions go about their lives, distracted, unaware that a visitor from the stars is passing above, but perhaps that too is part of the story. 3i Atlas reminds us that the universe does not wait for our attention. Its wonders unfold whether or not we look up, and for those who do, the gift is immeasurable. So how do ordinary people react? With awe, with fear, with indifference, with joy? In all the messy, beautiful ways, humans always react to the unknown. The comet is not just in the sky, it is in us. It triggers our memories, our hopes, our doubts. It makes us argue, laugh, cry, and dream. And in that sense, 3i Atlas has already fulfilled its purpose, whether natural or not. It has reminded us of our capacity to feel wonder, to be unsettled, to stand together beneath the same sky. Perhaps, years from now, those who saw it will tell stories. Perhaps they will say, "I remember the night I saw the comet from another star," and perhaps their children or grandchildren will listen with wide eyes, the same way our ancestors once listened to tales of omens and gods. In that passing down, 3i Atlas will live on, not just as a streak of dust in space, but as a shared human experience. While the public gazes upward with awe, fear, or indifference, the scientific community responds in its own distinct way with urgency, collaboration, and restless questioning. For astronomers, planetary scientists, and astrophysicists, 3i Atlas is not simply a spectacle. It is an opportunity, perhaps the rarest kind, an interstellar visitor whose path grants them weeks and months of study rather than days. Each night brings new data. Each data point raises new questions, and in laboratories and observatories across the world, the atmosphere is electric. The first wave of response is always observation. Telescopes scramble to book time, often competing with other projects. But with an object like 3i Atlas, competition quickly becomes cooperation. Observatories in Chile share data with colleagues in Hawaii. Radio telescopes in New Mexico compare notes with infrared instruments in Spain. Even amateur astronomers, with equipment far smaller, are invited to contribute. In science, redundancy is strength. If multiple observers see the same anomaly, it cannot be dismissed as error. The comet, in this sense, becomes a point of global unity, not of politics or religion, but of curiosity. Next comes the building of simulation models. In windowless rooms lit only by computer screens, teams feed data into software that calculates orbital trajectories, sublimation rates, and light curves. They attempt to reconstruct the comet's behavior, to match its strange pulses and deviations with known physical processes. Hours stretch into nights, nights into weeks. Equations pour across whiteboards. Students run endless loops of code, trying variations, tweaking assumptions. Yet each simulation seems to end with the same frustrating conclusion: something does not add up. And that is where the mood becomes restless. Scientists are trained to love mystery, but they are also trained to demand solutions. With 3i Atlas, solutions remain elusive. One model explains the acceleration, but not the brightness. Another accounts for the light pulses, but not the orbital deviations. It is like chasing a shadow that shifts each time you turn on the lamp. The data is precise, yet the meaning slips away. Still, the community presses forward. Conferences and emergency meetings are called. Zoom calls bridge time zones, bringing together experts who would otherwise never speak. Some argue passionately for exotic ices as the explanation. Others insist on surface fracturing. A smaller, quieter group suggests that we must be open to possibilities beyond the ordinary. They do not say artificial, not out loud. But the word hangs there, unspoken, electrifying the air. What makes this response remarkable is not the disagreement but the cooperation. Despite different languages, cultures, and institutions, scientists know they are witnessing something historic. Interstellar visitors are not common. In fact, this is only the third confirmed. Every scrap of data matters. And so they share, publish openly, invite critique. The usual walls of rivalry grow thinner. Curiosity overrides ego. The comet itself becomes a catalyst for human unity in the pursuit of truth. Yet alongside unity lies frustration. Journal editors demand caution. Funding agencies want definitive answers. The public, impatient, demands explanations. Scientists walk a narrow line. They cannot leap to wild conclusions, but they also cannot deny the strangeness. Carefully, they release statements filled with phrases like anomalous activity and unexpected variation. To the public, those words sound cryptic. To scientists, they are thunderclaps acknowledgement that the universe has given us something we do not yet understand. And behind the scenes, there is exhaustion. Researchers skip meals, miss family events, collapse into sleep at their desks. The comet is fleeting, and they know it. In weeks or months, 3I Atlas will drift too far, too dim, out of reach. If answers are to be found, they must be found now. The sense of urgency is almost physical, a pressure in the chest of every astronomer watching the light curve update on their screen. But there is also joy. To grapple with a puzzle like this is why many entered the field in the first place. For too long, science can feel routine measurements confirming models, predictions aligning neatly. But every so often, the universe misbehaves, and in that misbehavior lies the thrill of discovery. For a brief time, every scientist is again a child looking up, wondering not just how, but why. In this restless atmosphere, new ideas emerge. Could 3I Atlas be shedding material in a way we have never documented? Could its interstellar origin mean its composition is unlike anything we've studied? Could interactions with magnetic fields be nudging its path? Theories rise and fall, like waves, some dismissed in hours, others debated for weeks. The search is not only for answers but for better questions. And all the while, the comet moves on. It does not wait for us. Each night it creeps closer to Mars, each day it burns brighter. Scientists know they are chasing a moving target, and that knowledge sharpens their focus. They are not just studying 3I Atlas, they are racing against time itself. Perhaps in the end, the mystery will be explained. Perhaps new instruments or future missions will reveal the truth, or perhaps the comet will leave us with nothing but unanswered questions. But in either case, the scientific community's response will stand as testament to something profound: humanity's refusal to turn away from the unknown. When confronted with the impossible, we do not hide. We gather, we calculate, we argue, we dream. And maybe that is the real discovery of 3I Atlas, not what it is, but what it makes of us. A species restless in its pursuit of truth, united by curiosity, humbled by mystery, a species that cannot stop looking up, even when the sky refuses to answer. The farther 3I Atlas moves along its strange path, the more instruments capture it, the more data flows into servers and notebooks, the more humanity peers at it with sharpened eyes. And yet, instead of bringing clarity, the hard evidence only deepens the riddle. It is as though the comet offers us fragments of a language we have not yet learned. Symbols, pulses, spectral lines, teasing meaning without surrendering it. The first evidence comes in the form of images. Long-exposure photographs from ground-based telescopes reveal the comet's coma, a hazy envelope of gas and dust stretching wider than anticipated. Normally, as comets heat, their tails extend in predictable ways, thin arcs pointing away from the sunday. But 3I Atlas shows irregular flares, like wings expanding unevenly. In some frames, its brightness sharpens into points, too concentrated to be explained by dust alone. Amateur astronomers, posting their photographs online, marvel at its asymmetry. Professionals study pixel by pixel, asking why the geometry shifts so dramatically. Next are the spectra, the fingerprints of light. By splitting the comet's glow into wavelengths, scientists can determine its composition. Water, carbon dioxide, methane, all leave identifiable marks. But 3I Atlas refuses to play neatly. Its spectrum includes expected signatures, yes, but also spikes and gaps that resist explanation. At times, unusual metals seem present, nickel perhaps, or something stranger. At other times, the data suggests surfaces reflecting light with an efficiency unexpected for dust. Could it be crystalline ice, polished by some cosmic process? Or is it something we have not yet imagined? The orbital data only complicates matters. Each new calculation refines its trajectory, yet never fully pins it down. The path bends subtly, almost imperceptibly, as if nudged by invisible hands. For ordinary comets, outgassing can account for such deviations. But in this case, the magnitude and smoothness of the shifts strain belief. Models adjust, equations stretch, but the anomaly lingers like a shadow at the edge of every graph. Meanwhile, instruments orbiting Mars contribute their share. As 3I Atlas sweeps closer, orbiters like MAVEN and the Trace Gas Orbiter detect faint changes in the Martian atmosphere. Nothing dramatic, no storms, no sudden catastrophes, but slight fluctuations in ionization, subtle shifts in background radiation, too small to declare extraordinary, too consistent to dismiss. Data streams back to Earth, fueling both excitement and frustration. Even the radio silence becomes evidence. Massive dishes trained on the comet detect no transmissions, no deliberate signals. Yet the very act of listening shapes the narrative. Some argue that silence proves natural origin. Others counter that if a probe or watcher exists, it would not announce itself with frequencies we understand. Absence, in this case, is not emptiness. It is a blank canvas on which imagination paints. For the scientific community, the accumulation of evidence is both exhilarating and exhausting. Every image, every spectrum, every orbital tweak is real, measured, confirmed, repeatable. There is no hoax, no illusion. 3I Atlas exists, and it behaves oddly. But evidence does not equal explanation. The graphs pile up. The mystery grows thicker. And yet, within the frustration lies something precious, the recognition that we are living in a rare moment of discovery in real time. Most scientific breakthroughs come long after the data is collected, when analysis has matured, when theories have settled. But here, the world watches as the evidence unfolds, night by night. Citizens with binoculars share the sky with PhD candidates hunched over computers. Children see headlines on their parents' phones and ask questions that echo the ones filling observatories. Why is it here? Why now? The evidence also sparks philosophical unease. If the comet's anomalies can be explained by exotic chemistry, then it is a treasure chest from another star system, carrying new molecules into our hands. If the anomalies cannot be explained, then we are staring at something unprecedented, perhaps a new category of celestial object, or something beyond nature altogether. In both cases, the evidence matters not only to science, but to our collective sense of place. What strikes many observers most is the pattern of contradictions. The images suggest chaotic flares, yet the brightness pulses with rhythm. The spectra suggest exotic chemistry, yet also reflectivity that hints at something smooth, structured. The orbit deviates, yet in ways too regular to be random. Each line of evidence seems to confirm and contradict itself at once. It is like listening to music where the notes are clear but the melody makes no sense. For now, the evidence sits in archives, servers, and minds, waiting for interpretation. But interpretation is slow, and 3I Atlas does not wait. Each night, it moves farther, leaving its riddles behind like footprints that fade with the tide. Astronomers know they may never catch up. The comet may leave more questions than answers. Yet the hard evidence remains, etched into our records, ready for future eyes to re-examine when new theories arise. Perhaps, decades from now, a scientist will revisit these files and laugh at how blind we were, the way we now laugh at early astronomers who thought comets were vapors in the atmosphere. Or perhaps those future scientists will frown and whisper what some already dare to: this was no ordinary comet. This was the universe brushing against us in a way we still do not understand. For now, the evidence is both gift and burden. It proves the comet's reality, yet magnifies its mystery. It grounds us in facts, yet invites speculation. And in that tension, 3I Atlas fulfills its role not only as a traveler through the solar system, but as a catalyst for wonder. Silence. That is what the great radio dishes report when they turn their ears toward 3I Atlas. For all the flickers of light, the shifts in brightness, the strange rhythms of orbit and reflection, the universe remains audibly mute. No radio waves beam from the comet. No coded pulses repeat in a way that screams intelligence. No transmission whispers across the void. And yet, this very silence has become part of the mystery, because sometimes silence is louder than noise. In the decades since humanity first built instruments capable of listening, we have dreamed of hearing another voice. The SETI program, with its patient scanning of the heavens, has always hoped for a signal, a burst of regular pulses, a mathematical pattern, something undeniable. But the universe, vast as it is, has given us little more than background static. That same static now fills the channels tuned toward 3I Atlas. Hours of observation produce nothing but faint hiss. To the untrained ear, it is disappointment. To the thoughtful, it is provocation. For what does silence mean? It can mean absence. That 3I Atlas is exactly what the cautious say. It is an icy wanderer, obeying physics. But silence can also mean concealment. If another intelligence did hide within this comet, would it reveal itself so easily? Would it speak in radio waves? Knowing that civilizations separated by light years may not share the same language of technology, silence, then, does not erase possibility. It deepens it, reminding us that our expectations are limited by our imagination. Philosophers of science point out that silence itself is data. It tells us something about our place in the cosmos. Perhaps the universe is filled with watchers who prefer not to be seen. Perhaps communication is happening all around us, in ways we cannot yet perceive, encoded in neutrinos, in gravitational waves, in patterns of light too subtle for our instruments. To expect a signal in familiar frequencies is to assume others would think like us. But why should they? Even here on Earth, whales sing in frequencies we cannot hear. Trees communicate chemically in ways we barely understand. Silence on our channels may be noise on theirs. And yet, the silence of 3I Atlas feels different. For weeks, as it drew closer to Mars, instruments were tuned, antennas aligned. Every burst of brightness, every pulse of light was accompanied by a surge of anticipation. Surely, if ever there were a moment for the universe to speak, this would be it, an interstellar object, close enough for scrutiny, mysterious enough to invite speculation. And yet, nothing, just the cold, blank hiss. But silence is not always emptiness. Sometimes it is invitation. When we look at the comet and hear nothing, we are forced to ask deeper questions. Do we truly know what communication would look like? Are we listening with the right tools, or are we like ants, expecting the language of birds to sound like footsteps? There is also the haunting possibility that silence is the message, that 3I Atlas, whether natural or not, reminds us of our own isolation. The universe does not rush to comfort us with voices. It leaves us to wonder, to tremble, to imagine. In that sense, silence becomes a mirror. We are the ones filling it with meaning. We are the ones projecting hopes and fears into the void. The comet does not speak, but it makes us listen to ourselves, to our longing. History offers examples. When pulsars were first discovered, their perfect regularity was mistaken for intentional signals. when no messages followed, silence became the answer. Nature itself was stranger than we imagined. Perhaps 3i Atlas will follow the same pattern. The flickers and anomalies will one day be explained by exotic chemistry, unfamiliar physics. The silence will prove natural. But until then, we live in the tension, the gap between possibility and certainty. And in that gap, silence is alive. Consider the paradox. If 3i Atlas had broadcast a clear signal, prime numbers, coded pulses, the story would have ended quickly. We would know. But by saying nothing, it has said more. It has forced us to wrestle with our hunger for contact, to recognize how desperately we want the universe to answer back. The silence reveals us our need, our imagination, our restlessness. Even in art and culture, silence has power. A pause in music sharpens the next note. A silence in conversation can feel heavier than speech. In the same way, the silence of 3i Atlas shapes the narrative more than any message could. It is the pause in the cosmic song, the gap in the conversation, the heavy breath before an answer that may never come. And so, the great dishes keep listening. Their domes turn in the night, scanning frequencies, patient as monks. Somewhere deep underground, servers record terabytes of hiss, waiting for future eyes to notice what we might now overlook. Perhaps hidden in the silence is a pattern we cannot yet recognize. Perhaps years from now, an algorithm will find meaning where we hear none. Until then, silence reigns. But silence is not defeat. It is mystery. It is the open space where imagination blooms. For if 3i Atlas says nothing, then we are free to ask everything. Who are we? Are we alone? What does it mean to listen and hear only static? Perhaps that is the greatest lesson of all. The universe may never speak in the way we expect. But in waiting for it, in straining our ears toward the silence, we learn to listen more deeply to the cosmos, to one another, to ourselves. And so, as 3i Atlas glides past Mars in voiceless majesty, the silence follows it, not as absence, but as presence. A presence that reminds us that meaning is not always given. Sometimes it must be made. Sometimes the silence itself is the story. Suppose for a moment that 3i Atlas is entirely natural, no probes hidden in its icy heart, no messages written in its light, no intelligence guiding its orbit, just a comet, a frozen remnant from the birth of another star system, wandering through the galaxy until gravity nudged it toward us. To some, that conclusion might feel disappointing, as if mystery evaporates once explanation arrives. But in truth, the natural origin of 3i Atlas is no less astonishing. If anything, it may be more humbling, because it reminds us how immense, how unpredictable, and how gloriously strange the universe is, even without the hand of intention. The first lesson is one of scale. This comet has traveled for millions, perhaps billions of years, across interstellar distances that defy comprehension. It has drifted through cold so deep that heat itself becomes a memory. It has passed unseen stars, skirted nebulae, and endured the emptiness of the galactic void. And yet, out of all possible paths, it has entered our tiny corner of the cosmos at precisely the time when a species with telescopes and satellites could notice. That coincidence alone should be enough to make us bow our heads. It is not evidence of design, but it is proof of the improbable richness of chance. The second lesson is impermanence. On Earth, we cling to monuments, buildings, and histories, imagining permanence where none exists. But comets like 3i Atlas reveal that even the ancient is fragile. A few passes near stars can strip their ices, break their bodies, scatter their dust into nothingness. One day, 3i Atlas will vanish, eroded by time and light. Its presence here is temporary, a fleeting guest. That impermanence is a mirror for us. We too are brief. We too flare for a moment before dissolving into silence. Seeing the comet reminds us that transience is not tragedy, it is the natural rhythm of the cosmos. The third lesson is humility. Humanity often believes itself central, destined, necessary. Yet 3I Atlas shows us otherwise. Here is a body that has traveled eons without ever caring about us. It did not appear for our benefit. It did not alter course to be seen. It simply moved according to gravity, the oldest law. Our noticing it does not make it meaningful. It makes us small, and that smallness is precious. It pulls us out of arrogance and back into wonder. But humility is not despair. To be small is not to be insignificant. If anything, it sharpens significance. Think of a grain of sand on an endless beach. On its own, it is tiny. But if that grain can look outward, can recognize the vastness of the beach, then it holds something infinite within its awareness. 3I Atlas humbles us by reminding us that we are grains of sand. But it also exalts us by reminding us that grains can notice, can reflect, can ask. The fourth lesson is the power of chance. If this comet is natural, then its anomalies, its flickers, its brightness shifts. Its orbit are not signs of intelligence, but quirks of physics we do not yet understand. And that too is extraordinary. The universe is not simple. It is filled with surprises, emergent patterns, chaotic beauty. The fact that we cannot immediately explain everything about 3I Atlas is not failure, it is invitation. It tells us that even in 2025, with centuries of science behind us, the cosmos still resists being tamed. Chance is not emptiness. It is creativity, the endless capacity of nature to astonish. And then there is the lesson of continuity. 3I Atlas may be natural, but it carries within it the chemistry of distant stars. Its ices may contain molecules formed before our sun was born. Its dust may hide fragments of other worlds long destroyed. To study it is to touch history older than Earth, older than life, older than imagination. If it is natural, then it is a messenger not of aliens but of the galaxy itself, carrying news from far-off corners to our doorstep. That is not disappointment. That is wonder in its purest form. Perhaps the greatest lesson, though, is that meaning does not require intention. The comet does not care about us. Yet, we care about it. We have filled it with story, symbol, and speculation. We have argued, feared, and dreamed because of it. That is enough. The universe does not need to send us messages for us to feel meaning. Meaning arises in the act of seeing, of imagining, of being humbled. 3I Atlas may be nothing more than rock and ice, but in us, it has already become myth. Think of how our ancestors responded to comets. They lacked telescopes. They lacked models. Yet, when they saw fire in the sky, they felt something. They told stories of gods, omens, and destiny. Were they wrong? In one sense, yes, comets are not divine messengers, but in another sense, they were right. The comet was meaningful. It forced people to think beyond themselves, to recognize the vastness above. It humbled them. It awed them. That is as true today as it was then. So if 3I Atlas is natural, what then? Then it is still magnificent. It is still the third interstellar visitor we have ever recorded. It is still a frozen relic from another system, older than our species. It is still an object that challenges our models, teases our theories, and draws our eyes upward. To call it just a comet is to miss the point. Nothing that crosses such distances, nothing that survives such time, is just anything. In the end, the natural explanation may be the most powerful of all, because it reminds us that we do not need aliens or messages for the universe to astonish us. Nature itself is enough. Physics itself is wondrous. Chance itself is a kind of poetry. And 3I Atlas, in all its icy silence, is proof. So tonight, if you feel a twinge of disappointment at the thought that the comet is not a probe or a watcher, pause. look again. Remember the journey it has taken, the age it carries, the humility it demands. Remember that it is natural, and that natural does not mean ordinary. It means ancient, improbable, breathtaking. It means that even without intention, the cosmos still has the power to shake us. Perhaps that is the greatest gift. 3i Atlas offers the reminder that we do not need to invent miracles. We are already living in one. But let us turn the lens now, away from the comfort of natural explanations and toward the path that both excites and terrifies us. What if 3 Atlas is not natural at all? What if the flickers in its light, the peculiarities in its orbit, the smooth accelerations that resist easy models, what if these are not quirks of physics, but fingerprints of intention? What if this comet is not a comet, but something more, the artifact of another mind? The very thought reshapes everything we know. For centuries, humanity has asked, are we alone? We have pointed radio telescopes at the stars, sent golden records into the void, launched probes that whisper our presence into interstellar space. But all the while, silence has answered us. If 3i Atlas is artificial, that silence breaks. The universe, suddenly, is not empty. It is inhabited, and we are not the first to wander among the stars. The implications arrive like waves. The first is existential. If someone or something built this, then intelligence is not unique to Earth. Consciousness, creativity, technology are not accidents of our small blue world. They are part of a broader cosmic story. Our sense of being singular collapses. We are not the authors of intelligence. We are one chapter among many. The second wave is temporal. How old is 3i Atlas? If it has traveled for millions of years, then whoever launched it did so long before humanity built its first cities, long before we carved our first alphabets. It may have been drifting when the dinosaurs ruled, which means the civilization behind it is either unimaginably ancient or already gone. We may be staring not at a messenger, but at a ghost, the relic of minds who reached across time only to vanish before we ever knew them. The idea is both exhilarating and heartbreaking, to finally confirm we are not alone, only to realize our companions are extinct. The third wave is technological. If 3i Atlas is artificial, it embodies capabilities beyond anything we possess. To hurl a probe across interstellar space requires mastery of energy and precision that dwarfs our current rockets. To cloak it in the form of a comet, indistinguishable at first glance, requires artistry and foresight. And if it still functions, if its flickers truly are signals, then its endurance across eons makes our fragile satellites seem like toys. Such technology would be so far beyond us that to study it would be like Stone Age hunters examining a smartphone, wondrous, incomprehensible, transformative. The fourth wave is philosophical. If there are others, then what is our place? Are we neighbors in a galaxy alive with civilizations, or latecomers stumbling into a party long over? Do they watch us, study us, ignore us? Are we infants just learning to walk while elders observe in silence? Or are we alone not because others do not exist, but because they have already risen and fallen, leaving only wreckage disguised as comets drifting through the dark? And then comes the most personal wave, fear. If 3i Atlas is artificial, can it see us? Does it measure our signals, record our transmissions, judge our world? If it is a probe, what is its purpose? Exploration, observation, colonization? Our history warns us that encounters between unequal civilizations often end badly for the weaker side. What if we are not observers, but subjects? What if the silence is not ignorance, but choice? What if it is watching, quietly, waiting? These thoughts swirl in minds both professional and public. In the scientific community, few dare to publish them. Careers are not built on speculation of aliens, but in whispered conversations, in private emails, the thought recurs, what if? Meanwhile, the public seizes the idea with both hands. Online, theories multiply that 3i Atlas is a disguised ark, that it is a seed ship, that it is a warning beacon. Writers and artists pour visions onto screens, and in doing so, they reveal a truth humanity is ready, or at least desperate, to believe. And yet, to dwell only on fear would be a mistake. The artificial hypothesis also carries hope. For if others exist, then we are not an accident. The cosmos is not indifferent chaos, but fertile ground where intelligence blooms more than once. To meet evidence of another mind, even if only through its relics, would be to confirm that consciousness is not rare but inevitable, that the universe itself tends toward awareness. Imagine the day such proof becomes undeniable. Scientists confirm signals in the comet's flicker. Instruments detect structures too precise to be natural. The announcement is made. We are not alone. The shock waves would ripple through every layer of society. Religions would grapple with new questions of creation and purpose. Philosophies would be rewritten. Nations would reconsider their divisions in the face of a common truth. Fear, yes, but also unity, wonder, possibility. Humanity would look up together, for once, toward the same mystery. Perhaps that is the greatest implication, that contact, even indirect, might reshape us. For too long, we have looked inward, fighting over land and power. But to discover that the universe holds neighbors or ancestors would be to widen our gaze. Suddenly, our conflicts might seem small, our divisions trivial. The stars would call us outward, demanding we see ourselves not as tribes or nations, but as a species standing at the threshold of something vast. Of course, this remains speculation. Perhaps 3I Atlas is natural. Perhaps the anomalies will fade with better data. But even the possibility of artifice has already changed us. It forces us to imagine futures in which we are not alone, futures in which our place in the cosmos is both smaller and larger than we ever dreamed. So as you close your eyes tonight, let yourself dwell in that possibility. Picture the comet not as ice and rock, but as craft, silent and patient, carrying within it the fingerprints of another mind. Picture it sweeping past Mars, glancing at us with ancient eyes, then vanishing into the dark once more. Whether it is probe, ghost, or gardener, its meaning would be the same: that the universe is not silent, that we are not unique, that intelligence has walked these stars before us. And in that thought, terrifying and wondrous, lies perhaps the most staggering implication of all, that one day, if we endure, we too may send our own 3I Atlas into the galaxy, leaving behind a trail for others to wonder at, to fear, to revere. That one day we may be the whisper in another species' sky. History is full of moments when the universe whispered something new, and humanity's first instinct was disbelief. Great discoveries rarely arrive with applause. More often, they are met with resistance, ridicule, even anger. If 3I Atlas truly contains mysteries that challenge our models, then its story is not unique. It joins a long tradition of revelations that unsettled the foundations of knowledge before they became the pillars of truth. Consider Copernicus, the quiet scholar who dared to suggest that Earth was not the center of the universe, but merely one planet circling the Sunday. His model was elegant, simple, and deeply threatening. To believe him meant abandoning centuries of cosmology, rewriting theology, and admitting that humanity was not central. His work was published cautiously, couched in disclaimers, yet it cracked the walls of certainty. Many rejected it outright. And yet, in time, his heliocentric vision reshaped everything. Then came Galileo Galilei, who raised a telescope to the heavens and saw what others refused to see: moons orbiting Jupiter, phases of Venus, imperfections on the Sunday. Each observation was a dagger to the old world view, and each was met with suspicion. Critics claimed his telescope lied. Authorities accused him of undermining faith. Galileo himself was forced to recant under threat, though he is said to have muttered, "And yet it moves." The truth was there, plain through glass, but belief lagged behind. Centuries later, Charles Darwin shook the world again. His theory of evolution by natural selection suggested that humanity was not a separate creation but part of the same branching tree as every other creature. The reaction was explosive. To some, it was liberation. To many, it was heresy. The idea that humans were kin to apes, shaped by blind processes rather than divine decree, was intolerable. And yet, today, evolution stands as a cornerstone of biology, its once shocking claims integrated into the very fabric of science. The same pattern repeats in physics. When Einstein proposed that time and space were not absolute but relative, even his fellow scientists resisted. The equations were too strange, the implications too vast. It took years, and the bending of starlight during an eclipse, for the world to accept that the cosmos was more elastic than anyone had imagined. Each of these stories shares a theme. The new truth begins as the impossible. What seems absurd in one century becomes obvious in the next. And between those two poles lies struggle. The human mind resists surrendering the familiar, even when evidence mounts. We cling to what we know, not because it is right, but because it is comfortable. So when astronomers mutter that 3I Atlas behaves impossibly, they stand in the same place as those who once scoffed at Galileo's moons or Darwin's branching tree. The data unsettles, the theories bend, and disbelief rises like a shield. Yet history suggests that disbelief is the first stage of transformation. We can imagine how future textbooks might tell the story. At first, 3I Atlas was thought to be a comet like any other, but its anomalies persisted. Year after year, data accumulated until the evidence could no longer be ignored. What once was dismissed as error became the foundation of a new understanding of interstellar objects, or perhaps of cosmic intelligence itself. If that future unfolds, our present skepticism will be remembered not as failure, but as part of the process. Disbelief is not weakness, it is the natural caution of science. It prevents us from leaping into fantasy too quickly. But disbelief must eventually yield to evidence. The telescope does not lie forever. The fossil record cannot be erased. The comet's behavior will speak for itself. The parallel is striking. Every great revelation begins not with certainty but with anomaly. Galileo saw tiny dots dancing around Jupiter, insignificant to some, world-shattering to others. Darwin studied finches and fossils, trivial to some, revolutionary to others. And now, astronomers measure flickers in a comet's light, dismissing them, debating them, yet unable to silence the thought, what if this changes everything? There is also a cautionary lesson. Many who resisted new truths did so not out of ignorance, but out of fear of losing meaning, of losing stability. Copernicus dethroned humanity from the center. Darwin dethroned us from uniqueness. Einstein dethroned time itself from absoluteness. Each discovery felt like an attack on certainty. If 3I Atlas reveals something equally radical, whether a new class of interstellar object or evidence of artifice, it will unsettle us again. And once more, resistance will rise. But history reassures us too. Though resistance comes first, acceptance follows. What was once heresy becomes heritage. What was once feared becomes foundation. The impossible becomes inevitable. If we stand at the edge of such a shift now, then we are not alone. We stand with Galileo under the stars, with Darwin among his specimens, with Einstein scribbling equations no one yet believed. We stand in the long tradition of minds confronted by mystery, forced to grow. Perhaps this is the true gift of 3I Atlas, not answers, but the reminder that knowledge itself is a journey. Each time the universe surprises us, it reaffirms that discovery is not finished. Certainty is temporary, truth expands, and humanity, whether ready or not, expands with it. So as the comet sweeps near Mars, carrying its impossible behaviors, we should not despair at our confusion. We should welcome it. For confusion is the doorway through which every revolution in thought has walked. 3I Atlas may one day be remembered as ordinary, or it may be remembered as extraordinary. Either way, our disbelief today is the first note in a story that history will finish. And when that story is told, perhaps our descendants will smile at our doubts, the way we smile at those who once insisted Earth stood still. They will see what we could not. They will know what we only guessed. And they will thank the comet for teaching us, once again, that the impossible is only the unaccepted waiting for time. When the comet first entered public consciousness, it was through the language of astronomy, orbital paths, magnitude charts, and cautious terms like anomalous. But as with every great mystery, science was not the only voice to claim it. Very quickly, the story of 3I Atlas escaped the observatories and spilled into the wider world, into headlines, podcasts, social feeds, and living room conversations. And there, in the fertile soil of society, it began to grow new shapes: frenzy, conspiracy, poetry, fear. The media, as always, became the first amplifier. News outlets competed for attention, and attention rarely thrives on restraint. What scientists called unexpected variations, journalists translated into comet behaving strangely. What astronomers labeled spectral anomalies, headlines reframed as clues of alien technology. The words impossible and mystery appeared again and again, glowing from phone screens in the palms of millions. Overnight, 3I Atlas became not just a scientific event, but a cultural phenomenon. From there, the conspiracy theories bloomed. On forums and channels devoted to the unusual, whispers rose quickly. Some claimed the comet was a government cover-up, a secret asteroid on collision course with Earth, disguised as a harmless interstellar visitor. Others insisted it was an alien craft, long hidden, now revealed because its camouflage was failing. A few wove it into older conspiracies, tying it to prophecies, to coded predictions in religious texts, even to past comets that had supposedly warned humanity before great disasters. These stories spread with speed unmatched by official explanations. Why? Because mystery invites imagination, and imagination is rarely content with the slow pace of peer review. Conspiracies thrive on the thrill of forbidden knowledge they don't want you to know. But here's the truth. To believe such tales is to feel special, chosen, awake in a world that seems asleep. And 3I Atlas, with its undeniable strangeness, became the perfect canvas for such feelings. Meanwhile, in popular culture, artists and storytellers seized the moment. Musicians released tracks inspired by the comet, titles like Whispers from Mars and The Visitor's Tale. Independent filmmakers announced low-budget projects imagining 3I Atlas as everything from an alien ark to a time capsule from a forgotten civilization. Novelists drafted manuscripts in which humanity's fate hinged on decoding the comet's flickering light. Even brands tried to ride the wave, naming perfumes, sneakers, and energy drinks after the comet, eager to capture its aura of cosmic mystery. But beyond media and art, there were ordinary conversations. Families stood in backyards pointing at the sky, parents telling children stories of comets past. Couples on late walks whispered about what it might mean. In crowded cities, strangers on rooftops nodded to each other as they shared binoculars. For a few weeks, the comet threaded itself into the daily lives of people who had never before cared about astronomy. That, in itself, was a quiet revolution, society remembering the sky. Yet not all responses were hopeful. In some communities, fear dominated. Preachers thundered that 3I Atlas was a sign of the end times, a herald of divine judgment. Survivalist groups stockpiled supplies, convinced the comet hid a trajectory toward Earth, or that its passage near Mars would destabilize the solar system. Online influencers sold comet prep kits, blending pseudoscience with opportunism. For every voice of wonder, there was a voice of dread. This duality, hope and fear, is nothing new. History shows that celestial events have always split societies this way. Halley's Comet in 1910 sparked both awe and panic. Some bought bottled comet pills to ward off imagined poisons, while others celebrated its beauty. When shoemaker Levy 9 struck Jupiter in 1994, scientists cheered at the data while others whispered of omens. The same pattern repeats now. 3i Atlas is both miracle and menace, depending on who you ask. Social media intensified the cacophony. Hashtags trended worldwide. Some shared breathtaking images, writing captions about unity and wonder. Others spread grainy, doctored photos claiming the comet was changing shape. Meme culture joined in too, turning 3i Atlas into a punchline, a cosmic visitor photoshopped into parties and parades. In the global digital square, the comet became everything at once: sacred, ridiculous, terrifying, inspirational. And then there is the economic angle. Tourism boards promoted comet viewing nights. Telescope companies saw sales spike. Streaming platforms rushed to release documentaries. Even stock markets twitched as rumors spread about potential space mining opportunities or government budgets redirected to comet defense. The ripples of 3i Atlas reached not just minds but markets. What does all this say about us that society is not a monolith? The same event can be interpreted as sign, threat, joke, or miracle, depending on perspective. Science offers data, but humans crave meaning. We do not live by graphs alone. We live by stories, and the comet, silent though it is, has given us endless stories to tell. Perhaps this is the true societal lesson of 3i Atlas, that meaning is a collective act. Scientists interpret numbers. Journalists craft narratives. Conspiracists weave fears. Artists spin metaphors. Families share memories. Each layer adds to the whole. The comet itself remains unchanged, indifferent. But through our varied responses, it becomes alive in culture, refracted into 1,000 meanings. And maybe that is as important as the science. For even if 3i Atlas proves entirely natural, its societal impact is real. It has reminded us that the cosmos is not abstract. It enters our lives, unsettles our routines, inspires our art, shapes our fears. It binds us, briefly, under the same sky. So, as the comet arcs near Mars and the world continues to chatter, remember, this society does not only record the universe, it participates in it. Our stories, conspiracies, songs, and jokes are part of the response, part of the dance. The comet's light reaches us, and we send back meaning in return. That exchange, messy, flawed, human, is what makes the universe not just vast but intimate. If science frames 3i Atlas as a puzzle of physics and society frames it as a spectacle of media, then spirituality frames it as something deeper, a sign, a reminder, a mirror for the soul. For as long as humans have walked under the night sky, the line between astronomy and meaning has blurred. Stars became gods, planets became rulers, and comets, those sudden, brilliant strangers, were seen as messages from the divine. Even now, in an age of satellites and particle colliders, the instinct to interpret the heavens spiritually has not vanished. With 3i Atlas, it has only awakened again. Across traditions, the comet has been welcomed into old frameworks. In some Christian communities, preachers describe it as a herald of repentance, echoing the Book of Revelation's fiery stars. They do not claim it is the end of days outright, but they use its presence as a call to humility, a reminder that creation is vast, fragile, and beyond human control. In small congregations, prayers are offered beneath its light, voices lifting toward the streak across the sky, as if it were a hymn written in fire. In Islamic thought, too, there are echoes. The Quran often urges believers to reflect on the heavens as signs of God's majesty. For some, 3i Atlas becomes such a sign-proof that Allah's creation extends beyond human imagination, that worlds beyond worlds exist under His command. Imams remind their communities that the comet is not to be feared, but to be read as ayat, a verse of creation. One more reminder that humans are guests in a cosmos, not of their making. In Hindu traditions, the interpretation widens. celestial events often carry astrological weight. Some priests see 3 Itlas as an omen of transition, a symbol of cosmic cycles. In Vedic cosmology, time moves in vast ages, yugas stretching over thousands of years. The comet, sweeping from another star, can be seen as a marker of change, the cosmos reminding humanity of its place in the turning of eras. Rituals are held, offerings made, not out of fear but out of reverence. Buddhist teachers approach the comet differently. For them, its fleeting brilliance is a metaphor for impermanence. 3I Atlas appears suddenly, glows with beauty, then vanishes into the dark. It embodies the truth that all things are transient stars, worlds, even civilizations. To meditate under its light is to practice letting go, to see the comet not as a threat, but as a lesson in mindfulness, a reminder that nothing lasts, and that the only response is compassion in the present moment. Among indigenous traditions, especially those rooted in close observation of the land and sky, the comet resonates in other ways. Some elders describe it as a messenger, a traveler carrying news from distant ancestors. In certain Native American stories, comets are torches carried by spirits across the sky. In parts of Africa, they are arrows fired by gods, piercing the heavens to wake the people below. With 3I Atlas, these ancient narratives reawaken, passed on in fireside stories, adapted into new songs, or invoked in ceremonies that blend old wisdom with new awe. Meanwhile, in the modern spiritual landscape, New Age circles, meditation retreats, online communities, the comet has taken on a role as symbol of awakening. Some speak of it as a carrier of energy, shifting the frequencies of Earth. Others imagine it as a cosmic reminder to realign with purpose, to live with intention. Guided meditations encourage followers to visualize the comet as a teacher, its tail sweeping away old fears, its light igniting new visions. Whether or not one believes in energy fields or cosmic vibrations, the fact remains 3 Itlas has stirred the hunger for transcendence. Psychologists might say this is projection, that people use the comet as a canvas for their inner needs. The anxious see warning, the hopeful see blessing, the lost see guidance. But even if that is true, it does not diminish the power of the experience. Spiritual meaning has always been less about the object than about the response. The comet does not need to carry intention for us to find intention in it, and perhaps that is the secret gift of 3I Atlas. By sweeping across the sky, it has reminded humanity of something we often forget, that the heavens are not merely distant, they are intimate. To lift our eyes and feel wonder is to participate in a spiritual act, whether named in scripture or whispered in silence. The comet reconnects us to that primal relationship with the cosmos, the sense that we are part of something larger, older, and more mysterious than our brief lives. Some spiritual thinkers go further, suggesting that the comet is a mirror of collective consciousness, that its arrival now amid wars, climate shifts, and crises of meaning is not coincidence but synchronicity. The universe, they argue, reflects humanity's inner state through outer events. 3I Atlas, then, is a cosmic mirror, forcing us to face both our fragility and our longing. To some, it says, awaken, grow, remember who you are. Skeptics will shake their heads. They will say, a comet is ice and rock, nothing more. And scientifically, they are correct. But spiritually, people are not looking for facts. They are looking for connection. And 3I Atlas, with its impossible anomalies and interstellar origin, has become a vessel for that search. So whether it is prayed to in a chapel, meditated upon in a circle of friends, invoked in an ancient chant, or contemplated in silence on a quiet walk, the comet serves the same purpose. It draws us upward. It lifts the human gaze from the ground to the sky. It awakens reverence, humility, and awe. And in a world often consumed by noise and distraction, that is no small miracle. Perhaps, then, the true spiritual meaning of 3I Atlas is not what it is, but what it does. It reminds us that mystery is still alive, that the cosmos still has the power to interrupt us, that in the streak of a comet we can see not only physics but poetry, not only dust but destiny. It is a sermon written in ice, a meditation carved in light, a hymn sung in silence. And as it passes by Mars, silent but radiant, it invites us to pause, to breathe, to remember the universe is vast, but wonder is always close. The comet will not stay forever. Like every visitor, 3 Atlas will sweep through our skies, bend around the gravity wells it encounters, and then drift once again into the dark. Weeks from now, it will dim. Months from now, it will vanish from the reach of amateur telescopes. Years from now, it will be a memory stored in data archives and in the stories of those who paused to look up. The question, then, is not simply what 3 Atlas is. It is what it will leave behind. What lessons will humanity carry once the glow has faded? The first lesson is the endurance of mystery. In our modern age, we often assume that science has already mapped the contours of the cosmos. We live surrounded by technology satellites, probes, space telescopes that makes the heavens feel charted and predictable. Yet 3 Atlas proves otherwise. Despite our instruments, here is an object that refuses neat explanation. Its orbit defies calculation. Its light flickers in odd rhythms. Its spectra hint at strange materials. It reminds us that the universe still contains questions that resist immediate answers. When the comet leaves, that mystery will remain, urging us to keep searching. The second lesson is the value of humility. For all our achievements, landing rovers on Mars, detecting gravitational waves, peering into black holes, we are still young as a species. The comet has traveled for millions of years, older than every city, older than our species itself. To watch it pass is to confront our smallness. But humility need not be despair. It is fuel for wonder. It is the recognition that there will always be more to learn, more to explore, more to imagine. The future will demand humility as much as ambition. The third lesson is the power of perspective. When people across Earth stopped to gaze at 3 Atlas, they shared a moment of common focus. Different languages, different nations, different beliefs, all looking at the same streak in the same sky. For a brief time, the comet offered a reminder that the world is united by something larger than itself. When it is gone, that perspective should not vanish. If we carry forward the memory of standing together beneath the same light, perhaps we can learn to see each other differently too. The fourth lesson is the necessity of imagination. Scientists will continue to publish careful papers filled with cautious language, but outside the academy, people will keep dreaming. Some will say the comet was a probe. Others will insist it was a sign. Many will paint, sing, or write poems about it, and all of these acts matter, for imagination is not the opposite of science, it is its seed. Every great discovery began as a dream, a speculation, a story. If 3 Atlas awakens imagination, then it has already shaped the future of science, because the questions asked today become the breakthroughs of tomorrow. The fifth lesson is preparation for encounters yet to come. This is not the last interstellar object we will see. Oumuamua came first, Borisov second, now 3 Atlas third. The trend suggests that more will follow. Each one will bring new data, new puzzles, new debates. The lesson of 3 Atlas is that we must be ready not only with sharper instruments, but with more open minds. The future of astronomy will not be in confirming what we already know, but in embracing what surprises us. Beyond science, the comet may shape culture itself. It will linger in memory as the comet of our generation, the one that appeared near Mars, with whispers of the impossible. Children who saw it may become tomorrow's astronomers, artists, or dreamers. Writers may spin novels about its mysteries. Filmmakers may imagine its secrets. Teachers may recall it as the spark that made their students look up for the first time. The legacy of comets is always twofold. They leave dust in the heavens and inspiration in the human heart. There is also a lesson about impermanence. When 3I Atlas fades, some will forget it quickly, others will carry it for life. But either way, it will be gone, a reminder that even beauty cannot be held forever. This impermanence is part of its power. If the comet stayed always in the sky, we might stop noticing. But because it is fleeting, we treasure it more. The lesson is simple: wonder must be seized while it shines. And perhaps the most important lesson is to keep listening. Even if the comet speaks no words, even if it hides no signals, it has taught us the importance of listening, of turning our instruments outward, of leaning into silence, of asking questions without immediate answers. The habit of listening is what will prepare us for the day when something does speak, when a signal finally breaks through the static. 3IATLAS trains us not in certainty, but in readiness. When future generations look back, they may not remember the precise data, they may not know the debates about light curves or orbital deviations, but they will know that once humanity stood together beneath a streak from another star, puzzled and awed. And in that memory lies the lesson that may matter most, that wonder itself is worth preserving. For in the end, 3I Atlas is not just about what we learn of the cosmos, it is about what we learn of ourselves, that we are still capable of awe, that we still yearn for connection, that even in an age of noise, a comet can make us silent beneath the sky. And so, when the comet is gone, the real challenge begins. Will we carry its lessons forward? Will we remember to be humble, to imagine, to unite, to listen? Or will we let its memory fade into the static of daily life? The choice is ours. The comet cannot decide for us. It can only pass through, burning briefly, reminding us of the universe we inhabit and the future we might create. 3I Atlas will vanish into the dark. But the future is still here, in our hands, lit faintly by the tail of a comet that whispered, "If only for a moment, remember." There is a question that lingers in the shadow of 3I Atlas, a question older than science and sharper than myth. Are we simply observers of the cosmos, or participants in something greater? The comet, with its impossible quirks and haunting silence, stirs this inquiry in ways no textbook can silence. To watch it sweep near Mars is to feel both powerless and strangely chosen. It is as if the universe has staged a drama and invited us to witness, perhaps even to play a role. For much of history, humanity believed itself to be at the center of things. The sun rose and set around us. The stars circled above, as though placed for our benefit. Every comet was a message written to us alone. Then science shattered that certainty. Copernicus moved us from the center. Galileo showed us worlds circling other worlds. Modern cosmology revealed billions of galaxies, each with billions of stars. We became small, observers only, perched on a fragile rock in a sea of endless dark. And yet, with 3I Atlas, the question returns. If the universe is so vast, why do we keep finding ourselves at these crossroads? Why did Oumuamua arrive just decades after we invented telescopes powerful enough to track it? Why did Borisov appear next, confirming that interstellar visitors are real? Why does 3I Atlas now pass by Mars at a time when we are preparing to send humans there? Are these coincidences of timing, or are they part of a larger rhythm, one in which we are not only spectators but participants? To frame the cosmos as a test may sound mystical, yet it is not without logic. Life itself is a kind of test. Only those organisms that adapt survive. Civilizations, too, are tested by famine, by war, by their own excess. Why should the universe not test species at the scale of stars? Perhaps every intelligent life form eventually confronts riddles like 3I Atlas moments that challenge perception, demand humility, and force choice. Not because the comet is sent with purpose, but because participation in mystery is itself the crucible of growth. Seen this way, 3IATLAs is not merely passing us by, it is holding up a mirror. It asks, how will you respond with fear and conspiracy, with arrogance and dismissal, or with wonder, patience, and the willingness to learn? The test is not about the comet, it is about us. There is precedent for such thinking in philosophy. The Stoics believed the cosmos was a school, events designed to shape character. Existentialists argued that meaning arises not from the universe itself, but from how we choose to meet it. In both views, participation matters more than observation. We are judged, or perhaps judge ourselves, not by what we see, but by how we respond to what we see. 3. Ayatolahs. Silent though it is, becomes a question posed to humanity. Who are you, really, when faced with the unknown? Religions echo the same theme. In Christianity, the heavens declare the glory of God, and humanity is called to read them not as backdrop, but as revelation. In Buddhism, every fleeting event, from a falling leaf to a comet's glow, is an invitation to awaken. In indigenous traditions worldwide, the sky is not inert, it is alive, filled with spirits, ancestors, teachers. The comet, then, is not an object but a conversation. We are participants, whether we acknowledge it or not. Participation also has a practical dimension. If 3 Ayatolahs is natural, then studying it expands our science, shaping how we prepare for future interstellar objects, some of which may one day threaten Earth. If it is artificial, then recognizing it as such could be the greatest turning point in human history. In either case, to shrug and call ourselves mere observers would be a failure. The universe is testing our curiosity, our vigilance, our courage. There is also the personal angle. For each individual who looks up, the comet asks quiet questions. Will you pause in your busy life to notice me? Will you remember that you live beneath a sky larger than your worries? Will you allow awe to reshape you? Even for a moment, each person who stops to look becomes a participant in the mystery. Not everyone will, but those who do may find themselves changed. The metaphor of a test does not mean there is a grader in the sky, marking right or wrong. It means that meaning is found in engagement. A test is not only about answers, it is about growth. By facing uncertainty, we learn who we are. By struggling with anomaly, we expand our horizons. By meeting silence, we discover our own voice. So, are we observers or participants? The truth may be both. We observe the comet's data, measure its orbit, archive its light. But in doing so, we participate in a dialogue with the cosmos. The act of observation itself shapes us. It humbles, inspires, unsettles. It tests. The comet does not need intention for us to feel examined. We are already being tested by our own response. Perhaps this is why 3 Ayatolahs feels so haunting. Deep down, we sense that we are not simply watching a visitor. We are being invited, challenged to grow. And in that challenge lies responsibility. For how we respond now will shape how we respond to the next anomaly, the next mystery, the next whisper from the dark. So tonight, as you imagine the comet arcing near Mars, ask yourself, what is being asked of me? Not in terms of survival or science, but in terms of spirit. Will I meet the unknown with fear, or with wonder? Will I hide behind cynicism, or will I step forward as a participant in the unfolding story of the universe? Because in the end, the cosmos may not need our answers, but it may need our attention. And perhaps that is the heart of the test, not to solve the riddle of 3 Ayatolahs, but to remember that we are part of the riddle, woven into the mystery as surely as the comet itself. The comet will pass. Its light will fade into the deep black beyond Mars, and eventually beyond the reach of our instruments. The tail that now gleams faintly across our skies will dissolve into memory. What remains is not the object itself, but the echo it has left within us. And so, as we close this long journey together, it is worth circling back to the question with which we began. What is 3 Ayatolahs? The truth is simple and vast, we may never know. It may be a natural wanderer, a frozen remnant of some forgotten star system, behaving in ways that stretch our models but ultimately remain within the realm of physics. Or it may be something more, an artifact, a relic, perhaps even a probe from minds long gone. It may be neither miracle nor machine, but something stranger still, something that demands new categories of thought. The comet itself keeps its silence, gliding on as though indifferent to our speculation. But in that silence, it has spoken volumes. It has reminded us of our fragility. We, a species of brief lives and fragile bodies, stood together beneath the same sky and looked up at a visitor older than our entire civilization. We measured it, we debated it, we feared it, we dreamed about it. And in doing so, we revealed something profound about ourselves, that we are still capable of wonder. Perhaps that is the real gift of 3i Atlas, not its anomalies or its data, not its trajectory or its brightness, but the way it gathered us. Scientists at telescopes, children in backyards, poets at their desks, elders whispering stories, each of us turned upward, united by a streak of light from beyond the stars. In a fractured world, that unity is rare and therefore precious. The comet has also tested us. It asked whether we would meet the unknown with fear or curiosity. It asked whether we would cling to old certainties or allow ourselves to be humbled. It asked whether we are observers only or participants in a larger mystery. Each answer reveals not the comet, but us. And now, as the comet drifts away, what remains is choice. We can let it become a headline forgotten, a file archived, a story faded. Or we can let it remain as a reminder that the universe is still alive with secrets, that there will always be more to discover, that even in silence, the cosmos has the power to stir our deepest questions. So let this closing be less an answer than a lullaby. Imagine the comet receding into the dark, its tail dimming until it becomes indistinguishable from the dust of stars. Imagine Mars shining faintly, a red eye watching as the traveler departs. Imagine Earth beneath, turning quietly, carrying you within it as you listen. The universe breathes around you, vast and ancient, and you, small as you may feel, are part of that breath. Let the final thought be this: perhaps the comet was not a message at all. Perhaps it was simply a reminder that we are still listening, still searching, still awake beneath the stars. And if that is all, it is enough. So rest now. Let your mind drift as the comet drifts, slow and unhurried into the dark. The questions will remain, waiting for you tomorrow. But tonight, let them cradle you instead of burden you. Feel the mystery as comfort, the silence as peace. The universe is vast, but it is also gentle. It does not demand answers before sleep. Close your eyes. The comet fades, but wonder does not. You are small, yes, but you are also infinite. For within you burns the same fire that kindled the stars. Sleep now in that truth. Sleep knowing that the story continues, that the universe still whispers, and that in your dreaming you are already part of it. Good night.